I just thought it was the wrong number, Bill. It was your message. You wrote down.
All right, good evening. Let's call the meeting to order, gentlemen. Roll call, please.
Director Boyd.
Here.
Director Harvey.
Here.
Director Slater-Carter.
Present.
Director Philop.
Here.
Director Potasek.
Here.
President's statement. I want to make a statement about the meeting last night that happened at Fairlawn View. There were some allegations made about Montara Water and Sanitary District, and as always, I've done some fact checking. It's the responsibility of a public board to check facts. Somebody who's in the audience can make all the allegations they want, all the unproven allegations and spurious comments, but as the president of the district and as a representative and as the board member and as the history and policy and practices of our board, it's very, very important to each and every one of us on this board to be able to back up our statements. And the allegations revolved around Montara Water and Sanitary asking the 501 3C for an amount of money and shutting off the water to the park. Indeed, there's a long history between the water district and the park. Citizens Utilities donated the connection and the meter and the drinking fountain to the park before Montara Water and Sanitary took it over, and citizens had been donating the water to the park. According to our records, in about 2005, the fountain ceased to function and it was leaking, and we asked the operators of the park to fix it, and it ended up shutting the fountain down because the leak was not fixed. And in our precarious water situation, we just can't have little leaks draining our tanks. It leaves the entire community at risk. The similar situations occurred about every 2 years, and at our last notes show that the organization running the park actually had asked us to turn the water off at the meter, so that because they had leaking pipes that needed to be fixed. In addition, let me look at my notes here. In about 2009, in fact, it was in April of 2009, somehow, or maybe it was March, a discussion started about MWSD's antagonism to the park. It happened on Talk About, and in fact, nobody had contacted the district about any kind of sewer connection or water connection. And so our district manager made verbal contact to the manager or the head of the 501(c), and that was really the first contact that had been made. Prior to that, there was, just to use the word again, no homework being done, no allegations, no contact having been made, just rumors being spread. In May of 2009, it was on our agenda, and if you watch the video clip on Montara Fog, you will see this board doing a lot of tough questions, both of the folks who were running the park and of ourselves on how to handle this, because we were concerned. We have a responsibility to the community to make sure that we didn't have leaks. There had been a history to make sure that bills got paid. As we know now, bills were not getting paid, and we were in any event, we have a duty to our ratepayers and to, as a friend calls it, the stockholders of our system. That means everybody who's a property owner or a tenant in the community. You all own and pay for a part of our system. So we have a fiduciary responsibility to you. In June of 2009, and again, it's on Montara Fog, you can see that this board passed a resolution It was unanimous, and it was to give a water and sewer connection to the park. We have been contacted by folks who have been representing themselves as being part of the park. We've given them free engineering time with our sewer engineers. It's been happening on and off again. The fees that were waived, the engineering time, and the bills that haven't been paid and so on are in excess of a $40,000 gift of this community to the park. So the statements that were made about us holding the park up for a very small amount of money are totally contradicted by the written record. And I think it's very important for people to understand that this district has a history of supporting parks, of supporting parks, both as a district and as individuals. There are minutes from a Parks and Rec Committee, 2002, when MSD, Montara Sanitary District, prior to our assuming water, was talking to Midcoast Community Council about pocket parks. The committee members were Jim and Scott, as a matter of fact. And Paul Perkovic and I had a history dating way back into the 90s of trying to get the county to take up pocket parks and take up their responsibility to us as an urbanizing area to provide parks. So the history and dedication of this board and this district to the community resources and community services goes way, way back. I'm glad that the county has taken on the efforts to protect Moss Beach Park as a safe place for our children to play and to take it over. But Montara Water and Sanitary District will be discussing in a later agenda item tonight, if we want to stand in the background and be able to, in case the county falls through. Sometimes with 4 members of the Board of Supervisors, things don't always go as planned. Montara Water and Sanitary, again, we support our local parks. We have proven it with our donations of time and money and effort on the part of everyone here. So thank you very much. A few public announcements. Next Thursday, the county is hosting an event to talk about the Princeton Plan. And I mentioned it at our last meeting. It's in the evening. Please plan on attending. It's called Plan Princeton, actually. It's very, very important to go and let the county know what you think of what you want the future zoning and uses to be in Princeton. And Senator Hill, our state senator, Jerry Hill, on Friday, the 27th, from 1 to 3 p.m. in Redwood City, you can call his office, is having an important workshop for seniors called Senior Scam Stopper. There's a lot of folks out there who are trying to take advantage of seniors, and there's going to be senior scams, I'm sure, coming up with the new health care laws and trying to convince you to perhaps buy into something that you don't need to. So Senator Hill and Assemblyman Gordon and Mullen are all hosting this workshop. So thank you very much. Let's move on to oral comments other than those on the agenda. And if you want to speak, if you let me know, and we'll ask you, if you haven't filled out a yellow slip, which is at the front, you can speak and then fill it out and give it to me, but we need to make sure your name is spelled right in the minutes. So do I see anybody who wants to comment? Gone. Public hearing, we have none. Consent agenda. That is approve the minutes for the meeting of June 6th, July 18th, August 1st. Approve financial statements for June 13, 2013. Approve warrants for September 1, 2013. SAM flow report for July 2013. Monthly review of current investment portfolio. Connection permit applications received, monthly water production report for July 2013, rain report, and solar energy report. Gentlemen,
I'd request that items 1 and 2 be pulled.
okay? Which is?
Minutes and financial.
I move approval of items 3 through 9.
And I second the motion.
Okay, motion by Scott, second by Jim. Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Let's discuss item 1.
The June 6th minutes, we had discussion and I'd asked for some clarification, and I guess my concern is that that clarification seems to have ended up in 2 places. There's a reference on page 8. Clarification on this discussion was requested by Director Tolog. That clarification is attached. There's a sheet attached with some language. In the following set of minutes for July 18th, that language that was attached is actually inserted into the minutes as a comment on the prior minutes, which I think is the proper form. So I would suggest that it's belt and suspenders, and that we ought to have a policy of either modifying the minutes as they're corrected, or if there are extensive comments, as in my case, that they be noted in the subsequent minutes.
Okay, any more comments on that? Would you like to see it as just an ongoing policy change, gentlemen?
Could you, Chris, could you amplify that a little bit? What exactly you're talking about? What
Well, if you
what do you want?
go to page, it's unnumbered, there's an addendum that's been added to the June 1st minutes. It's titled Clarification from Director Tholog, which, as it's written, I think belongs more in the minutes of the meeting for which I made those statements, which is the following one, rather than both.
The addendum was made at the second meeting? Or the first
Yeah,
meeting?
well, the comment was at the first meeting following the June 1st meeting, which is when we had on the consent agenda approval of those minutes. I raised the issue that I wanted to clarify that I didn't agree that an intertie was a first step to consolidation of the districts. And also that the agreement wasn't about a temporary meter. The agreement that had been entered into by this district and CCWD read to me as a full-on intertie agreement. And those issues were picked up in the additional language. My concern is that they're both added to the minutes of June 1st as well as embedded in the minutes of July 18th.
And so you want, is your preference to see your comments inserted physically into the minutes as a clarification, and you don't like having them as an addendum on the back? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I made the comments at the July meeting. I'd like them part of the July meeting minutes.
Okay. Thank you. So let's move them to the July meeting minutes then.
They're already there.
Oh, they are already there.
That's
Okay,
the
so
point.
all
They're
we need to
both
do,
places.
all we need to do is remove them from the June 6th meeting then.
Correct.
So, shall we approve these in, or let's just approve the July 18th minutes then, and
June
Well,
June
let's-
1st,
Let's,
June 6th rather?
thank you.
well, if
Well,
you're
the
okay-
June 6th has the clarification on the back that you don't want it.
Right, we're striking that,
We're going to strike that.
Right?
and then leaving the next set of minutes the way they are, because that's where the comments were made to clarify.
Exactly.
Right. So, I'll move approval of the minutes for both June 6th and August 1st.
with the strikeout.
Well, hang on a
Or,
minute.
I'm sorry.
There's another issue on the July 18th minutes.
Okay.
So the July 18th minutes that were presented to us in draft form on August 1st had 3 pages of my interchange with, primarily with Bob, on his request to be removed from the treasurer role. And I had strenuous objections to 3 pages of paraphrase, basically sentence by sentence, being done by the general manager. And we had a long discussion, none of which made it into the August 1st minutes. So my concern about that, the response from the board was, one, that there were board members that liked that detail, and two, that it was important to have that detail in the minutes because you couldn't rely on the actual video because the video wasn't retained. Interestingly, none of that exchange ended up in the minutes. What we agreed to do was to table the minutes and come back at this point. What I find now is those 3 pages have been removed. And in its place has been what I think would have been an appropriate statement to make in the first place, which was that there was a lengthy discussion. But what I'm curious about is how did that happen between this board stating that they liked that, and that was the general practice of the board, to this being removed entirely, and no discussion about the materiality of what we do with regards to minutes. Now, how detailed should they be?
Okay, this is a much longer discussion than on the consent agenda. Let's move this to the last item on the agenda then. Do I have,
Why?
because I'd like to have a longer discussion of it. We have people here who are waiting for other items on our agenda, and it's somewhat of a housekeeping
I don't think it is,
policy
but
issue.
you know, we can vote on that.
I'm happy to hold it now, but I hate to have the audience held for when they are here
I
for,
think it should be of interest to the audience, how the meetings get recorded, and how the facts get recorded, and how they get changed.
thank you. Gentlemen, can we have your opinions, please?
We do discuss this, and we debated whether we should take you, word for word, have the staff, do the best they can to record what you say, or have a comment of general discussion was made. And I don't think we came to a conclusion at that point.
So how were they removed?
Well,
The preparation of the minutes is always a staff function, so, you can ask us all you want, but it's a staff function. I'll note that frankly, that was a really hard meeting to try to prepare minutes for, just, I was there, I remember it. And honestly, a lot of the material that was presented was rather personally charged, and I think it presented a real challenge to try to accurately portray what was being happened in the meeting. I'm not unwilling to see it reduced to a lengthy discussion ensued, because at the end of it, what matters is that it's clear what has motivated the actions of the board, best as can be captured in a set of minutes. I don't know that capturing that in all of its glorious detail advances that goal, but if somebody insisted on having very detailed minutes, that's fine too. The reliance on the tapes and the video has never been something that boards do. It's required to keep minutes. And while we were the first to record video and put it out there for the community to see, it's never been something that has been required or even built into the policy of the agency or any agency that I know of for eternal preservation of those. So back to the what we're talking about here, the minutes. What's your preference? What would you like to see?
I'm not stating a preference, I'm stating a concern. My concern is, on the one hand, I'm paraphrased with 3 pages of material that I think materially misstates what I said. On the other hand, the following meeting, when I raise a concern, and there's an extended discussion with the board about that, that is not reflected in the minutes at all. So there's some, it's uneven. That's a concern.
It sounds
That's a
like
new concern.
a new one called damned if you do or damned if you don't.
No, I'd say what the minutes are to do is to accurately capture the dialogue and discussion that occurs at the board. And my concern is, it's being selective.
You know, the staff did the best they could to, in the first instance, the staff did their best to describe the minutes, to summarize the minutes. If it was inaccurate, it wasn't done inaccurately on purpose. They did the best they could. You didn't like the summaries and the description, and so.
I thought it was a waste of time.
Well, then.
And I
now it's-
stated that.
and
It seemed
now-
ridiculous to me to put that kind of effort into attempting to capture every nuance, where if somebody really wanted to understand the full discussion, it was available via
Okay,
the video.
So now it's taken out.
But then the discussion about that is omitted from the minutes altogether. I asked for some policy guidelines about what is the intention of the board. Is the board's intention to summarize salient points, or is it to capture and paraphrase virtually everything that's uttered?
Well, Chris.
And that was deferred to this meeting.
Okay,
So I'm
gentlemen-
engaged in a discussion.
Gentlemen,
on this
can we,
house.
wait a minute, can we hold this discussion until, as the last agenda item, please?
Okay, that's
Can I
fine.
have a vote on
That's
that?
fine with me. I'll vote for that.
Straw poll,
I have no objection.
Bob?
I think that's better since we're not getting anywhere.
Okay. We will move this consent agenda item to the regular agenda, to the, last item under new business. Moving on, we have financial reports, financial statements, June 2013.
Okay, so I received a memorandum from Clemens, imagine all you did, that says the district accountant informed staff that the financials cannot be submitted because the closing of the books for June 30th, 2012 is, 2013 has not been completed at this time, and the rollover balances aren't final yet. I'd just like some more information.
Well, that would essentially affect the balance sheet. Balance sheet would be incorrect, and the financials are supposed to be submitted all together, P&L, balance sheet, and that's why we moved the approval of the financial, especially since it is year end, to the next meeting when we have that information available and can record it accurately.
And so the next meeting is the 19th?
Well, it states here to the next consent agenda. If the board wants consent agenda to handle this item on the 19th or a specific board item, then we can add that to the 19th. Otherwise, it would actually be handled on the October 3 meeting.
Okay, gentlemen, what's your opinion?
What does May say when they can be done? I mean, that to me seems to be what's gonna drive when it's on. Can they do it by the 19th? If not, it doesn't make any sense for us to say, let's put it on the 19th if they can't get it done.
Well, I've phrased it to the next consent agenda, meaning I've asked them, can you prepare them by October 3? And the answer was yes. I don't know about the 19th. I assume that shouldn't be a problem, but don't know.
Well, since they're the ones that are having difficulty getting it, I would defer to them, that if they can get it on the 19th, put it on the 19th. If they can't, put it on the 3rd.
My preference is as soon as possible, which would be on the 19th.
Well, if they can do it, let's get it on the 19th. If they can't,
Okay.
it's the first available one after they can get it done.
Okay.
So my concern is that we got the set of financials for the first time at the August 1st meeting. And that set of financials overstated administrative expenses by $800,000 plus. We assumed that that was some kind of a mechanical error. And we relied on another set of financials for the budget process that had administrative expenses of $852,000. The delta between those two, one set of financials was saying we suffered a net loss from operations of $191,000. In the same board packet, we had a financial worksheet that said that we had a contribution to net assets of $600,000. So we relied on the one that said we had a contribution to net assets of $600,000. And we continued to rely on that up till the meeting that we had on the 29th of August, where we adopted a budget based on that. And to take it a step further, we now have posted on our website June 30th financials that represent that we had a positive contribution to net assets from the prior year of $600,000. And now I'm getting a notice from our accountant that's saying that they can't provide us financials. So I'm wondering, we're 2 months past it, it's a critical piece of information, and we're releasing it on our website to the public, but we're not able to get it.
So the difference in the two statements that were submitted in, when was it, August meeting, was a summary, a sum essentially misstated. This was a wrong line that was added there. I asked for further confirmation from Mays about this item, had received that verbally, and asked for that in writing as well, and haven't been able to get a final answer from them yet. So the verbal answer was, we used the correct statements.
But they're not, but they don't wanna provide them. All right? What are the numbers? I mean, either the numbers are there, and of course they're subject to final adjustments, it's a year-end close.
Right.
But we relied on that to set a budget, and we've dispersed these numbers to the public. So I guess I'm really concerned, is there something more fundamental about Mays that we're missing here?
I quite honestly don't think so. I think that they were short-staffed. They see probably that the changes that are still made to the year-end close are non-material. They've submitted a set, and they confirmed that this is that those numbers are correct and good. And now the difference in statements, I think they want the absolute correct information submitted. I do not think that there is a material difference.
Well, I guess my other concern is, if I don't have a balance sheet I can rely on, then I've got even more concern about the budget which the other board members here adopted at the last meeting, which I did not approve, which, and again, this is the document that you put up on the website, stating that we had other revenue, we have a plan for other revenue of $1.27 million, when the majority of that, over $1 million, is from a prior year. That's not revenue at all. Unless I have a balance sheet so we can tie that out and clarify this point, I've got a real problem with adopting the budget and certainly with releasing it to the public.
This was not shown as revenue. This was shown as an account summary of the capital account, and the capital account currently contains that amount of money. We physically have a bank account with that amount of money available. So we can simply pull a bank statement and show you that that money is in the bank.
What you have up on the website right now is an other revenue line, revenue of $1,273,000. And I know the breakdown of this includes bond revenues, which we received last year, of $1,150,000. That's listed as revenue, it's not revenue.
No, the bond revenues that are listed in the budget are the bond revenues that are that we anticipate to receive this year, this fiscal year.
Okay, so $1,150,000 is what we're gonna receive from bond revenues this year?
That we will receive. You're looking at the budget, I don't have it in front of me, but the numbers that are in the budget referring to the, bond revenue are the numbers that we will receive that revenue. And
We're
also-
floating new bonds.
No, and we will disperse
No.
it.
No,
So we're not floating new bonds. These are bonds from when?
this is not bond proceeds, this is the bond revenue, this is the, Montara Sanitary District bond payments that we receive and pay for the,
And turn it
sold bonds.
back out to the bonds.
Yes. This is not bond proceeds that are listed here. The bond proceeds are listed under the capital account summary.
Okay, I'm not seeing the offset in other revenue and expense, so again, if I had a balance sheet, it'd be easier to tie this out. But my concern is, if I don't have a balance sheet, I can't tie out what you adopted as a budget to the balance sheet.
Understood. I suggest that we proceed with that when we have the balance sheet and P and L, and our accountant was able to produce those.
I would suggest that we have a financial committee meeting to iron these details out.
Oh, I think that we've conducted the financial business at the board level. But the budget as adopted was presented in its current form without review by the finance committee from the general manager and adopted at the last minute because failure to do so would have put us in violation of California code.
Yes.
That's why we had that meeting on the 29th. There was no time to review this. It was presented, it wasn't even included in the budget packet. It wasn't included in the meeting packet.
None
Right.
of the numbers, unless cash flow were changed. So, all operations, the entire operations budget stands exactly as the finance committee, sent it to.
Actually, it doesn't. The finance committee didn't send it to you because we didn't agree. There was a $240,000 item that
No,
was
but the
related
finance
to a
committee
prior year.
agreed to present that very budget.
No, we agreed that
With-
we would bring the items forward to the full meeting,
It
Yes.
to the
sounds,
full
That
board.
means presentation at the budget. Bringing to the full board means presentation at the
Not of that
meeting.
plan.
I understand that you had,
My
certain
point
disagreements, but
is that the real discussion about finance here doesn't occur at the finance committee. It's occurred at the full board. And to say that you want to take this offline to a finance committee, I
I
think is
said,
misstating what
no,
the
no.
operating procedure has been of
Chris,
this
I'm the
board.
one who suggested that this discussion could take place in the finance committee, not Clemens. I'm looking at folks out here who came for specific agenda items.
Chris, the board discussed the budget for 4 hours, passed the budget. It was 4-1, but the board passed the budget. We discussed it until 11 o'clock at night, and we passed the budget.
We discussed a
Now, if
lot
you
of
wanna-
things
If you
till
wanna discuss
11
it
o'clock
further
at
with
night.
Bob and the finance committee.
No,
report back.
I want to state my opinion,
Okay,
and that's
so
what I've done.
Go ahead, okay, you stated your opinion.
That's
I'd like
correct.
to make a comment.
Thank you, please,
Uh,
Scott.
We had the last minute necessity to have the meeting because we didn't have a budget. We didn't have a budget because you've been working so hard over the past many months to try to radically reshape our books. And while that's all well and good, we missed a pretty important deadline and we had to do something about it. So, you've been whipping this dog pretty hard.
You bet.
And, you raised some bogeyman flags about big discrepancies that turned out later to be misreads. So I just wanna say.
No, that's not true.
Excuse me, let's,
No, if he's gonna make an accusation like that, I'd like to have more details, so let him provide the
I'd like a
detail.
little decorum here.
please let him finish, then you can ask him.
Where we are has never, in my 15 years on this board, been this contentious. Never, until this. And you're the one whipping it that hard. And you continue to drive on it that hard, and I very much appreciate your professional training that you're bringing to this, and I've been very supportive of a lot of this rework, but I'm not supportive of doing this in a manner that it has led to this kind of contentiousness. I'm not supportive of that. I'm not supportive of missing our deadlines, or nearly missing our legally required deadlines for getting the budget passed. Yeah, we took some action. I gotta tell you, you didn't have the votes at the last meeting to convince us to take the budget that it was presented to us in the format that you brought to us. You just didn't have the votes. And there are ways to get the votes, but whipping this dog that hard is not gonna get that done. We did something that was very much aligned with what we have done for years. And I understand that you have issues with these things, but there are some of those issues where, for as passionately as you feel about these things, maybe there's still things that we need to learn about what it is you're trying to tell us, but we aren't on the same page on some of these. Where it's material, I think we're all very interested. But, you know, there's a certain degree of collegiality that has to occur to bring us all along so that we can get the unanimous votes that are the big desired thing here. But if we can't get it, we're still gonna pass the budget, and 4-1 shows which way that wound up.
It sure does. So back to my point, what was it that I presented that was a material issue that you feel evaporated?
There was
That's how you characterize it.
There was an issue that was of substantial concern on the order of 6 figures, as I recall, that at a subsequent meeting, you and Mays reported to us that you figured out what that was, and it wasn't the big thing that we had thought. It got us all spun up, but, you know, we were all glad to hear that you and our accounting firm had figured out it wasn't that big thing. But we've had just a lot of excitement on this topic in the past year, and, you know, we still have to be able to set rates. We still have to be able to tell the county what to put on the tax bills. We've gotta get all that done.
And frankly, that's the reason I'm not running for the board again, because there is so much work to be done at this district in terms of getting the financials to what I think is an acceptable level, that it puts me as a finance committee member in a double bind. I can't be in the position of being the primary liaison to the accountants and also exercise fiduciary oversight of the numbers that are being generated out of that process. Okay? So I've got some material concerns about what isn't being done. And it's not a function of Clemens not trying hard. It's more a function of the scale of the district and the inability of the district to fund things like a finance profession. You know, and the problem is that the board doesn't understand that well enough to keep you out of trouble. So you had Jim Berry charging, you know, $120,000+ a year for accounting services that were garbage, right? So and it took an inordinate period of time to just get that straightened out.
I understand that you didn't like his work. I get that, but
Well, you're gonna argue with the number?
I'm.
No,
do
but
not-
You spend $120,000 plus for
do
accounting,
not-
is there an issue there?
Excuse me, do not put words in my mouth.
I'm
I did not, yes you did.
one at a time, please.
Yes, you did, and Chris, cut it out. I didn't say anything about the number yet, you jumped right all over that. What I was about to say was, that fellow is a member of our community, and disparaging his work disparaging his work with the broadsides, I really think it's unbecoming. I don't think it's wholesome at all.
What if
I
it's
think
truth?
I think that when it comes time to criticize something, we can get specific and criticize the work. I don't much care for criticizing the man. The work was done here in concert with the staff and the board, and we've had good, clean audits for years. So, you know, we got some reason to think, okay, maybe we could spend more money. You know what? We went out for an RFP, we wound up with somebody who's charging a lot less. We're spending a little more on the front end because we've had the transition costs and a huge reworking of the books. You know, time will tell whether or not we actually save the kind of money you're talking about. I'm willing to accept that 120 might be a number that we all accepted. It's time to put out for an RFP. That's fine. We all took that. You made the suggestion, you pressed hard for it, we went through it. We went through the selection process, we wound up with Mays. I think we're all very happy with Mays. I agree with that. I don't see the point in getting personal about the man who was doing the work that we were asking him to do. It doesn't seem to be helpful, and it certainly doesn't seem to be in harmony with what I believe I understand this community's nature to be.
It wasn't as simple as 120,000. Last November, we had a financial statement that showed us way over budget in terms of manpower. And there was clearly a problem. And when we went to Jim Berry, the response was, oh, it's a double booking. We'll deal with that at the end of the year.
And
that's completely unacceptable,
To you.
period. Okay,
Fine,
so,
but
that's
you
how
made that
special
point.
districts get into trouble. That you just start taking someone's word that these financials, oh, it's a problem, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it a lot later, right?
Well, we've been through this process.
And that's where I got into trouble, because, nobody liked the fact that I was saying the emperor had no clothes. And what I got for my trouble there was blowback from the general managers saying, who are you to question this guy? We're getting feedback from the community, they don't like, the tone you're taking about this. And then Bob goes MIA after that. So for weeks, I'm trying to
You get to
figure out.
respond next, Bob.
I have the challenge of trying to get to a unified chart of accounts so we can get to a clean system. The treasurer's not helping at all. I've got blowback from the general manager, and I'm just kinda like the lone ranger out there trying to get a new set of financials. Now,
Well, and
if
that's where-
what you believe is that that was all, cursory, or that was all superficial, then fine. I'm here to tell you that my opinion as a financial person is that it was terrible. And that's what I've tried to clean up.
I understand, and you're absolutely right. We've had comments. And you're absolutely right that that you've been taking it on like the Lone Ranger. And where I completely and utterly disagree with the approach is there are 5 electeds here. None of us is the Lone Ranger. And from time to time, each one of us has had to be reined in by the rest of us to say, we gotta work together. And year over year, we do that. Bob and I have had our fallings out, right? We worked together. Made our way back to it. It wasn't easy, but I would say that
Stronger for it.
much stronger for it. And I could pick on Paul. Paul and I certainly had our fallings out, and we've all had our things, but we gotta work together as a team. And when somebody comes in and driving hard, that's fine. It's great to have fresh blood and fresh eyes on the problem, and I think we were all a little surprised and excited to see how much vigor you were bringing to it. But I gotta tell you, when we get down to the point where we gotta pass a budget so we can set rates and collect taxes, so we can operate this district, we actually gotta be able to close that. And we gotta have enough votes to get it done. And what we saw was we had to take a last minute Hail Mary to go back and say, look, we're gonna take what we've got with as little change as possible, but with enough actionable information on it so we can actually do the rate setting and meet the state requirements. Yeah, that was a bit last minute, but you know what? We had to get it done. And on the business of Jim's approach to truing it up, I wasn't thrilled with that, but it's been the case that from time to time, we've had to true something up, and year over year over year, we're not deferring it and saying, we'll sweep that under the carpet and get to it later. It's, we're gonna get to this point where we have enough time to true it up, and then year after year, it gets trued up. It would be great if every single minute of every single day, our books reflected 100% accurately what this agency is doing, but the fact of the matter is, we do it in monthly increments. And, we haven't seen the kind of thing year over year that concerns us, that things are being pushed off and pushed off. The kind of things that year over year we were concerned about was whether or not we were gonna take on a policy of fully funding depreciation, policy matters like that. Those were the things that we were concerned about. We were concerned about getting enough detail into the budget so that we could make some good policy decisions about the individual budget areas. This year, because we pushed it all the way down to the last minute, we didn't actually adjust policy in the way that we've done previous years, where we had a discussion back in June to set the budget for July, and we could talk about the larger, policy issues relating to the budget. We ran out of time because of all the churn in what was happening with the books. So, yeah, that's where we get down to the 4-1 last time. And if we've got an issue with some discrepancies, that's gotta get trued up, and there's not a single member of this board who's gonna sit idly by and say, okay, staff, don't worry about it. That ain't gonna happen. If you've identified a problem, especially in how it's being represented, if the wording on the website doesn't explicate carefully what needs to be explicated, let's get it fixed. But this accurately reflects the work of the board as of the 29th. It's on the website, and so if somebody wants to come along and find a problem with it, great, let's fix it.
Bob?
Well, let me, I apologize, we're gonna go a couple minutes over here. If the 3 pages that we discussed earlier, the explanation of the MIA and the discussions were all in there, I take offense to that because I told you then, we've tried to meet, we couldn't meet. When we have met, our meetings are contentious. And the way that I'll just give you one example of how, from my point, our finance meetings went. On one of the budget items, the difference, the low number could be anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000. Clemens had suggested 13 to 14. That's when you suggested, we're putting too much at the high end, we can use contingency and put it at the low end. I said, fine, let's go with 10. And you on the computer said, fine, I'll enter 7. That's how that's how our financial meetings went. It went in the way you needed it, the way you wanted it. You interfaced with Mays. You're not acting as a liaison. You took the role and you dictated to Mays. I would find out after the fact what had been dictated, what changes were made. So, you know, I really would like to get off this topic because the budget items that we presented and that we eventually voted on were exactly what came out of the finance committee that was presented to the board. The only difference between what was presented initially and Clement's second version was the back end on how the cash flow was stated. If it said $2,000 in the budget item, it said $2,000 in the budget item. The only thing that was pulled out were the engineering and all the costs that you had taken out of the budget and put into contingency, and the contingency wasn't high enough to carry it. I asked that that be put back into the items. So what we approved is what was presented. It was a matter of format at the back end of cash flow or sources where it came from. And my suggestion is, if I was sitting in the audience, I would really wonder if this is a dysfunctional board. And I'm not trying to hide anything from the people. I think they can stay back and be more entertained. But these folks are here about the Boss Beach Park. I think we should at least get that topic over, and we can have this wonderful discussion, continue it later until my next meeting's at 7 in the morning, so I've got till then.
Okay, gentlemen, shall we move this to the end, number 8 on new business? Or shall we finish it up here? I'm
I
looking for
think the
direction.
audience ought to vote on that.
Let's move it to the end.
Let's move it to the end, Bob. I heard your suggestion. Scott, what's your? You're okay either way. Well, I think this discussion should continue, and so let's move it to item 8 under new business. Moving on to new business, item 1, review and possible action concerning Moss Beach Park.
So I'm sure everyone here has followed a little bit the story of the Moss Beach Park. It was originally donated to the owners, to the nonprofit organization in the 70s for the purpose of maintaining a local park. And since then, the park was handed down from generation to generation. And everybody here is going to remember the great community involvement. About 10 years ago, there were significant improvements made. I think that was a testimony to how important the park is actually for the community. Over a month ago, the Moss Beach Park was sold by the Sanitary County at an online auction. The owners, the nonprofit running the park, did not pay its taxes for about 7 years. A minimal notification process led to not only the board of supervisors approving of the sale without knowing of the details, it also kept the community in dark until weeks after the sale. And that's when the new owner actually tried to subdivide the lot and contacted the county again. Since then, the county announced that the revision of the sale under the condition that the outstanding taxes around $8,000 would be paid within 2 weeks. So at the last week's special meeting, some members of the community came forward and asked Montara to take on the responsibility for the park to avoid a similar scenario in the future, and asked for an item to be placed on this agenda. The citizens then explicitly stated the need for local control for the park that so many have helped to create. And the reason was brought that Montara has a locally elected, locally controlled board. We have public meetings that can be attended directly here in the community, are televised on Pacifica TV. We've served the community since 1958 for sewer and trash services. We purchased the water system 10 years ago from the privately owned company, and have now an independent, self-sustainable, environmentally responsible, sound water system that is serving our community. In the past, we had discussion about providing park services. So the district repeatedly stated its political will to provide those services. And I think it's important to note that unrelated to the current issue, the prior discussions revolved actually about the fact that lands owned by Montara are currently used by the public and how to improve public access to them. So let me be specific. We have a parcel at the Alta Vista site that is currently kept open for as hiking trails to Montara Mountain. We have the park's property adjacent to Montara Creek between Hart and George Street that is used for recreational purposes. And we also have the Loma Vista Terra Alta lot that's used by the citizens up in that region for a similar purpose. The section 31.130 of the California Water Code states that any water district may use any water or land under its control for recreational purposes, and in connection therewith may construct, maintain, and operate any works or facilities appropriate or ancillary to such recreational use. That means Montara is currently able to take ownership and provide operation of the facilities. We've learned some news yesterday. I attended the Parks meeting yesterday with Supervisor Ron Horsley, and the county offered a solution. Essentially, their plan is it to reestablish a board for a new nonprofit organization, transfer the property to them, and then it is planned that the county actually takes over the park. Now, this actually requires a policy level change for the county, since the county has in the past had a policy not to be involved in local parks. So county is involved in regional parks. We see, for example, the Devil's Slide Park is one that is now under county jurisdiction, and they're doing some work up there. So this is a new scenario that I think we all in the community are somewhat surprised to learn about. This planned policy change, it hasn't happened as of yet. What is currently needed is that within 2 weeks, until the 16th, I believe, the $8,100 should be paid to the tax collector. I'm not quite sure why it is the 16th, and I didn't hear anybody asking that question. So again, this item was asked by the public to be put up, and so we have this up for board information and discussion. And Yeah, we're happy, staff is happy to receive any directions that the board can give us.
Thank you. Okay, we have public comment. Leonard Warren.
Always have to ask for the first speaker that comes up. Good evening, Madam President and directors. I am here basically to support the district becoming the property owner. I would suggest that initially what you would want to look at is trying to acquire the property as the owner, but then leasing it out for a token payment back to the nonprofit that I just heard the county's going to establish, and that was, I think, an excellent staff report from your general manager. The Little Hoover Commission report on special districts, I think it's dated 1999 or 2000. It's report 155. I mentioned report 155 because they buried it. It's hard to find on the website now. That report, which eventually resulted in the Hertzberg amendments to Cortese-Knox in 2000, takes a really, really dim view of single-purpose governments, and spends a lot of the report covering why vertical consolidation is the appropriate form of government. A city is the standard example of full vertical consolidation, and the consolidation talk that we keep hearing here is almost exclusively from people that don't like the Granada and Montara boards, and so they want to do horizontal consolidation, which is exactly orthogonal to what the Little Hoover Commission report suggests is the right form of government. And if you want to know what's wrong with the county owning and operating the property, county dumped 60 tons of asphalt in Quarry Park, which is a somewhat rural park, not an urban park like Moss Beach Park. 60 tons of asphalt for a 100-foot trail from the parking lot to the tot lot. And we couldn't stop them. They thought that was appropriate. And so that's the kind of thing you get when you let the county run things. I suggest the community really wants the local control that you're only going to get from this district owning the property. As far as the opposition that you hear all the time, as most of you are aware, Granada Sanitary is applying to LAFCO to reorganize the CSD so that we can do Parks and Rec. Virtually all of the opposition, with just a tiny handful of exceptions, is from outside of the district. So personally, I don't care, because they don't matter. It's what my constituents care about, and for what you do here, please only pay attention to your constituents, because the loudest voice is somebody from Half Moon Bay who's attacking. He's throwing red herrings out here. He's attacking who maintains the website and where it's hosted, and just on and on and on, dreaming up dirt to throw at this board, which has no connection to any reality that I know of. An interesting thing that regarding the Granada board, we just appointed to fill a vacancy. Director left town and resigned from the board. And if I've counted correctly, we just appointed Jim Blanchard, who's the board president of Midcoast Parklands. He is the 6th director since 1999 that we've lifted from the MPL board. So the nonprofit parks group in El Granada has contributed 6 directors in 12 years to the Granada Sanitary District Board. Okay, the Granada Sanitary District, and there's a really irritating article on Montara Fog that goes way out of its way to imply without saying that Granada's trying to fly our parks thing under the radar.
Leonard, could you stay on the topic here?
That's it.
Real quick mention, we're having a town hall meeting on the 19th, our regular board meeting day.
Thank you.
It'll be a special location.
Thank you.
The one other thing I should mention,
That's it.
as I said at the Midcoast Council meeting, but not everybody here may have heard this, this
Probably.
property getting transferred is actually the second time there's been an incident like this on the coast side, because the Harbor District in the early 90s sold Quarry Park to a developer. So the only way to make sure things like that don't happen, the only way is to have it owned by a local agency here.
Thank you. Michael O'Connell?
Good evening. Members of the Montara Water and Sanitary District Board, concerned citizens in attendance, and those watching at home. My name is Michael O'Connell. My two sons and I purchased the Moss Beach Park at the San Mateo County Property Tax Auction on July 23rd of this year. We deposited our funds into escrow by the July 26th deadline. The county tax collector was in receipt of our funds on July 26th at 1 p.m. Now I'm going to quote from the State Revenue and Taxation Code section 3708. On receiving the full purchase price at any sale under this chapter, the tax collector shall, without charge, execute a deed to the purchaser. 3708.1. Upon execution, the tax collector shall immediately record the deed with the county recorder and pay the recording fees. Recording of the deed shall constitute delivery thereof to the grantee named in the deed. That would be myself and my two sons. As the owners of Moss Beach Park, we would very much like to partner with the Montara Water and Sanitary District for the district to become the owners and guardians of Moss Beach Park for the benefit of the coastside community, to which we also consider ourselves a member. I grew up in Pacifica, my kids grew up there, we're coastsiders too. And that's all I have to say, and I wish you a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Olson?
Sort of hard to follow that. I just wanted to say I fully support MWSD getting into the business of providing and maintaining parks, be it Moss Beach Park, be it hiking trails up at Alta Vista, be it the property back behind us, giving access to the bluffs. We need far more recreation here, both for hiking, my personal favorite, and for parks for the children of the residents on the coast. So I fully support that. And as a resident of Montara, I would also support raising rates if that is necessary to have parklands.
Thank you. Claude Wendell?
So I'm here as a ratepayer for the last 36 years in this district. And my comments about, I was at the meeting last night with folks that were there, and to me it was overwhelming just from the applause from the community that was there to support their park. A lot of those people put a lot of effort in putting it together. My grandchildren play there. I've been taking them there for years. And so I want to see the park live just like everybody else. But I'm also a ratepayer in this district, and I don't think, just looking at what I've observed for the last 37 years, it was about, 10, 11 years ago that we bought the district from citizens, correct?
10 years ago in August.
Okay.
And it was from
Yeah.
RWE. CalAm RWE.
And about 2 years ago, I think it was in 2011, we saw a publication saying that we finally arrived at a point where we have enough water to start hooking water connections up to either existing homes that are on wells or failing wells or whatever, and possibly selling water connections to the infill lots. And if I'm quoting this correctly, I think the article even says there is now enough water to serve the build out of this area. I'm interpreting that as meaning all the vacant lots that we have if we were to.
In Montara and Moss Beach, not
Okay.
El Granada.
Okay, well, El Granada doesn't need it. They're in a different water district, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my concern is this. Just listening to you tonight, I've only come to a few of these meetings over the years, because I have, as some of you probably know, I'm a real estate agent, so I also represent people who are trying to develop their property. And we all own homes, I would assume. And so if I've owned a vacant lot for 10 years, been waiting for my water connection, right now, I came into this office 3 months ago and asked, how do you go about doing it? And from what I understand right now, only about half a dozen connections have been dispersed
Okay.
since.
This is pretty much off topic on the
Okay,
item
well,
on the agenda.
it's not off topic because I'm gonna give you the reason that I do not support you taking over the park. You've got some other problems that you need to solve first. And I'm a ratepayer here, and so I'm talking to the audience as well as you,
Yes.
okay? And by that, I mean that the resources you have, if you get those water connections out there, you're gonna increase your revenue. The sooner you get that done, the lesser my rates will be, because I know they're higher than anywhere else in the county. I know they're higher than in CCWD. And they will not allow a water connection that's sitting on your property not to be used, which I also believe you're gonna be able to do, perhaps. You're gonna, right? So I'm opposed to you attempting to take this park, because the other reason is you have revenue at the county to do that for you. Why would you want to expand your resources to do something? Yes, it's very nice, and yes, we would have more local control. But in my 36 years here, it was pretty evident what happened in last week, because I was out of town when it happened, and I heard all about it. And what I heard last night, in just a few days, the county came to the rescue. We dodged the big bullet. We didn't lose the park. This gentleman now wants to participate with you, but he's a developer. So I don't know about that.
You say that like it's a bad thing and you're a realtor?
What's that?
Scott, you had a comment?
Let me address your first point about the water connections. So we've been working a very long time since before taking ownership of the water system, working with the Coastal Commission to get to where we could address the issues necessary to be able to offer hookups. And a couple of years ago, we established to our own satisfaction that, especially working with our engineer, determining that the work that we had done on water conservation and repairs to the system did indeed leave us with enough water to serve the needs of the community, above and beyond what the current regulations allow. Now, we've been working ever since with the Coastal Commission on what it's going to take to satisfy their requirements. We are in the home stretch. We have worked very closely with their staff, and we will be on their agenda as soon as they can get us onto the agenda. We were really hoping to be on the September agenda, did not make that, but it is imminent, and we are in a very good place with them. And it's come after just a whole lot of work, especially with staff, engineer, our attorneys. We've got a committee that Catherine and I have been on for I don't know how long. It sounds like a lot of talk, but if we actually marked out all the events on the timeline, it's been a very busy time.
I take no exception to that.
And my point on this is that issue is in the home stretch, and I do believe we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We talked back when the park folks were coming to us and talking to us about what would it take to establish proper rights to water on the park property. Paul and I and staff and others, but we all did a bunch of research and went all the way through the files and everything. And we, in the course of doing that, we talked about what would it take to properly operate that. So Paul and I, and Clemens in particular, spent some time talking about what would that take. And if you look at what largely Bill has been doing ever since the construction was completed, with the help of a few others from time to time, it's not a high maintenance kind of item. It needs certain things done properly. It needs a proper bathroom. We saw drawings of what a good bathroom like that would look like. Something along those lines is certainly achievable. The county offered up funds to build that bathroom. And
That was discussed last night.
It's been a disappointment to me, who worked so hard to help find the documentation that allowed us to find the variance to offer a water connection to them during a time during a time where we could not offer new water connections, mind you, through the restrictions imposed on us by the Coastal Commission. We worked really hard
Okay.
to facilitate that.
Catherine admonished me because I'm not here to discuss water connections.
Well, but
I used
just
it
want you
as
to
an
understand.
example of what I'd rather see my district doing, and when
Mhm.
they've done it, then I might be a little bit more supportive.
Well, then-
But when
then
you have
I
the
ask-
resources for parks at the county,
Right.
I don't see why you'd wanna take that on.
Okay,
Well,
Claude, and Scott, I think this is going to be, particularly given Mr. O'Connor's, comments, an ongoing item.
I understand,
Please come back.
but I'm here to state, okay?
We
But
hear
since-
your opinion, and I think it's a very valid one.
Thank you.
And I think the ongoing discussions will be very interesting. I hope you will continue to be involved.
You bet. You know
Thank
that
you.
I'm running for the Mid-Coast Council.
I know that you are.
And that's why I'm here. To
So-
live and learn.
So, just to finish the thought, the thing that's gonna be on the commission agenda, we believe that when they vote on that and approve it, and we have every reason to think that their staff has things lined up to meet the, you know, to meet the concerns of the coastal commissioners, at that point, we'll be good to go. So, I can't make them go any faster at this point, but we've done our part, and it's been a lot, and, honestly, it's been a great project to be on. It's been much more complicated than, anyone would hope, but honestly, having been part of that the whole time, the issues that have been addressed have been very important issues, and I'm really glad we have, so.
So just to finish your comments, I didn't get up there to talk about water connections, but because I am a real estate agent and I represent people who are either trying to develop their lot or buy a lot to develop, you walk into your offices out here and your staff say that we have water and you can buy a water connection. That's not a correct statement, because you can't right now.
No,
You're not finished.
Well,
When you can deliver a water connection, when I have my building permit in my hand.
Let's let Clemens answer that. I will
That's why I got the
I
information.
will interject that our board is willing to sell water connections. Unfortunately, the county will make you develop a well first. And that's the county and the coastal commission, not this district.
But what is being advertised is not what's really real. That's, the objection I have.
Let's bring this up at a
Well,
later
Could we have
date.
our manager address that, please?
Yes, it is absolutely true that we state that we have water available, excess water available, and that is what I tell everyone. And I tell everyone that at this time, we cannot issue connections. It would simply not be processed through the San Mateo County. So I know that, you know that, but what I'm concerned about is there are people that don't live here that are coming
Okay.
here, walking into your office, and they're gonna make a financial decision to purchase a property.
Let's
Everyone-
take this
everyone is
discussion
referring to me.
offline.
Everyone
Thank
is
you.
referring to me and
Bill
I give
Keogh.
the information.
Can I get back on topic?
Thank you.
Did I miss something good?
You can watch it on the video.
A minute away from here, you always miss something good. I believe what's before the board is whether or not to look at a backup plan should the county not deliver on its somewhat rushed promises of last night. And I would highly recommend having, and I wish the gentleman stayed, having spent the past 4 years on the MCC and having attended other special district meetings up to the point where I don't have an evening to myself most of the time. And understanding how regulations stop special districts from proceeding in their business because of other outside agencies. But the thing that I think most people here would like to see is local control. It's always been the thought here in the unincorporated Mid-Coast that it's very difficult dealing with the county. They do have a process, they have a very long, over-regulated process. Sometimes it's not well understood, even by its own employees. They have their own set of criteria, which it goes far and above what most people on the coast side want. It takes longer by years from what most people are willing to wait. I mean, it's kind of tough if you're gonna have to wait 5 years for a toddler park because your kid's probably in middle school or high school by that point, as mine were. I think, in listening to the meeting last night, I'm glad the county stepped up to it. but it wasn't the county that stepped up to it. It was Supervisor Horsley making promises that haven't gone before the board yet. And as I raised objections last night to him basically selling something that hasn't even been agendized yet was a little disingenuous, as this gentleman was pointing out, or trying to point out that sometimes happens at other agencies, but had he attended more meetings, he probably wouldn't, I understand that better. But I don't see, well, I mean, just off the top of my head, he was looking for a way to settle an issue that was very close to the local community with a solution that spreads throughout the entire mid-coast, and the whole idea of parks and recreation and policy that wasn't well thought out. Everybody's for one toddler park, but if you're gonna take over managing neighborhood community parks, neighborhoods and communities go beyond the toddler park. You've got teens that need skate parks, baseball, skateboard things, basketball courts, tennis courts, whatever. You need them in all the community. Pocket parks are not really meant to serve a whole regional area. That takes a lot of planning. There hasn't been a needs assessment done out here on the coast side for almost 14 years. The last one was done in 2002. There was a quasi one done in 2007, which they like to point to, but only 48 people seem to have been notified for it, so that is not really a needs assessment for the coast side. So I've been looking into this, and I don't think this will go well when it gets presented to the full board of supervisors. There'll be a lot of questions asked. How much money are they committing? And we've gone to elections by district. I'm kind of wondering what the other 4 districts are gonna think about when all of a sudden, this 3rd district is looking for a lot of money. Okay, so I'll wrap it up. I think, what's that?
Yes, Leonard.
Yeah, okay, so anyway, I really think it would be nice if you sort of at least started thinking about the feasibility of the backup plan.
Thank you.
We're gonna need it.
Well,
Okay, bringing it back to the board discussion.
I did take an opportunity to talk to.
Actually, here's a short comment to make.
About
It'd be
parks?
appropriate. No, be appropriate, Phil. Just appropriate.
It's my first meeting, it's great. I'm on the audit committee of my company, so I understand what you guys are doing. But just to refute not the last speaker, but the speaker before that, Clemens gave us full disclosure on the issues with water
Thank
when we
you.
purchased the land. So that's all I want to say.
Okay.
That we were never told that there's water available, and he was very honest with us.
Thank you very much. Okay, bringing it back to the board.
I was interested in, that the winner of the bidder, made a presentation that he had an interest in, he would prefer that we would locally control it, so I think, depending upon what happens with the county, I'm not going to speculate. I think we have an opportunity, as we had said, we can use a monitoring well, for our purposes. And that property is good situated for putting in a monitoring well and letting the rest of it be used as a park, so there's a good symbiotic relationship there. And so Plan B may be what will have to happen, depending on what happens at the county, but I wouldn't try to get in front of the county train, let it go ahead and run down its aisles and see how far it gets, and that's why I told Horsley yesterday, it was just Plan B, and when A fails, we're here if necessary.
Thank you. Scott, let's give a comment.
I wanted to hear from you since you were at the meeting last night and I couldn't attend.
Okay, Bill, why don't you come up?
I just have a real quick question. What do you mean by a monitoring well?
I'd rather, Mr. Clemens, our general manager, will explain the need for and reasons for monitoring wells.
We have a requirement in the state to monitor groundwater levels, and we cannot use production wells to do that. So what we use is all kinds of other forms of wells. One, for example, would be a piezometer, which is essentially just a small little 2-inch sized well that can be very inexpensively installed with a handheld tool, ram tool, for example. It's an ideal location. It's located directly next to the creek, so it would actually really benefit the groundwater monitoring that we're required to do by the state anyway, so.
Very good.
Okay. The meeting last night was, very interesting. There was a lot of people who had worked on the park, a lot of folks who had supported it, a lot of people who were there who had used it with their children or their grandchildren. I think people were aghast that the property had been sold. Apparently, every so often, the county does, tax lien sales, and there are hundreds of, or many, properties listed by, assessor's parcel number, not by use, not by address, so all you see on this is a number that, for instance, for Moss Beach, the map is 037, then it gives the block, and then it gives the lot number, so it's a, 9-digit, separated, 3 sets of 3 digits. There's really no way, short of knowing, quickly what the map books are, even what community it is, and, it was on the consent agenda for the Board of Supervisors. They were shocked and amazed when, somebody who was following it at the county planning was, saw that, or a citizen from Montara, from Moss Beach or Montara, saw that there was a subdivision application, and in fact, the, past due taxes started in year 2006. I went and looked at the records at the county recorder's office. There is a deed, a quitclaim deed that, restricts the use of the park to public services and parks. I don't have it memorized and I don't have it in front of me, but essentially, if it's not used for that, then the quitclaim deed, which was signed over in 1975, the property goes back to the owners who deeded it to the nonprofit. One of the problems is the nonprofit has ceased to exist. As Bill said, the county has a number of steps that it has to go through, and so I think it will be interesting to watch. I think this board needs to decide if we should stay in touch with Mr. O'Connell's kind offer, and see how we can further the interests of this community and this district.
So, that fits with everything that I read, and that includes, well, we, at our last meeting, we went and found and looked up the resolution that we had passed.
Which is in the board packet.
It's in the board packet, and one of the things that I wanted to double check, we remembered that we had put in restrictions on the variance that we were finding, to allow for use of the water connection. We did have findings and granted a conditional variance, and that conditional variance required that the property be in continual use as a public park. We got fancy language for that, but that's what it boils down to, and that's very much in line with what our intention was. So I was really glad to see that we had written it down properly. There were so many people who worked on that park. I mean, that is near and dear to the hearts of every single person who picked up a hammer or turned a screwdriver or served up a meal or did any of the number of things. And I know it's been said many times, but I'm really grateful to the people who organized all that, and for the people who got together with Leathers, the company that had the whole big plan for how this kind of thing gets done. I mean, it was really an amazing achievement, something that really instilled a great sense of community, and it's a wonderful thing. So I'm very interested in doing what we can in a supporting role. I think it's very clear, both from the staff presentation and my reading and understanding of the water law over the years, especially in the time that we were looking at taking over ownership of the water system. We had to get educated on that. It's pretty clear to me that we can do this. It's also clear that the county wants to take a swing at this, that several parties involved have some interest in local control over this kind of thing. Hopefully we can do something in conjunction with the county to bring this to a good resolution. I know that in reading Bill Hill's comments on Montara Fog that it's so much effort went into the creation of the park. One thing that, I mean, and that was just amazing, but one thing that's really hard to get right in a community effort is the ongoing sustaining work that it takes. And that's something that, whatever you think about local government, we meet all the time. When you know, wake up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, the tap works. You know, when you flush it, it all goes away. The garbage gets picked up. Week in, week out, day in, day out, year over year. And if there are responsibilities of a kind of the ongoing care and maintenance of a facility, we do that for our pump stations, we do that for our monitoring stations, we do that for our wells, we do that for our pressure regulating valves, we do that for all the pipes that you can't see. We have people working with our community members on billing issues and water leaks and all the other myriad things. In terms of can we handle taking on this thing? Well, you know, the more you get to know about the things that we take on and handle day in and day out, every single day, yeah, I think so. I'm not worried about it at all. The only thing I'm worried about is whether or not staff is up for it. But I remember back in '09, Clemens and I and Paul talked about it. And it's like, well, we talked about the ins and outs, and you know, you gotta have someone who's gonna unlock the bathroom and lock the bathroom every day. You gotta have people who are gonna be committed to cleaning it, dealing with clogged toilets, and other maintenance that comes with the joys of home or park bathroom ownership.
Let me quickly state that, actually, some of our staff have helped build the Moss Beach Park, and we have ongoing discussions here, and I think they would all be thrilled to
Yeah.
help with the maintenance.
I think in '09 it was kind of a new idea, and we were, you know, would we? And after giving it not even really much thought, it was like, yeah, of course we would. So the question is, at this point, can we work it out with the county and whoever winds up with clear title to it? Until the title's clear, it's all kind of moot. So I think we just want to do the things that are supportive of the whole process to get it to where it's in the right hands, whoever that turns out to be. And I was really surprised and impressed that the gentleman made his comment. This has clearly become a very heated issue, and I'm glad that he came and faced what could have been withering criticism and decided to come here and put himself out front. And I didn't expect it, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, any more comments? Hearing none, I'd like to form a committee to deal with this in the future. Do I have volunteers?
Yeah, I'll volunteer.
Jim
I have some interest in
and Bob. Thank you. I'm on so many committees. I appreciate that. Next item, review and possible action concerning approval of solid waste services contract with Recology of the Coast.
Okay, so, members of the board, the staff report is gonna look much different what you have in here than what I'm gonna say right now, because, yesterday it was not clear that we will have legal representation.
These are for the audience.
And therefore, my recommendation in the staff report is to move that item to the next regular scheduled meeting when we will have legal representation.
Well, wait a minute, Herm's here, but he
I'm gonna
hasn't,
have a complex here.
So,
but he
now-
has not dealt with us on this contract, nor has he studied it, so as astute and accomplished an attorney as he is.
Keep going.
Okay, so.
Jim, would you take over and
Sure.
run to the back room?
Sure.
Essentially, we've worked long and hard with Ecology on the Coast on this contract, and we've literally worked with Dave Schricker, our legal advisor, who is not here currently until yesterday, and he was able to send us a review sent us his comments and also sent a resolution for the approval and authorizing execution of the contract with Ecology. We've reported a number of times about the service changes that are reflected in it. I think the major change that we have to note is the distribution of new receptacles that is for the recycled. We will receive 64-gallon containers for recycling. And also for the rest garbage, we will start with the size that everyone is subscribed to right now. So anyone who's, actually that's not quite true. Anyone who has a 30-gallon can right now will receive a 32-gallon can. So I want to point out that there's, it is difficult to compare the price changes that are associated with, because some services actually have increased by a small margin. So yeah, there is going to be a difference in prices associated with the new services. Also goes back to that Ecology has been operating at a loss for some time. This was extensively reviewed by the committee, and this board agreed to raise the drop to a team limit on the October 3 meeting. The rates are planned to be effective on October 1. So the rate committee might add what I left out. Bob?
Well, actually, we're going to do the approval on the 3rd, and
Of the contract?
yeah, the changes of back and forth and updates and corrections and recorrections, are we all okay in that everything in the contract to them the way we want it, and which means that, you know, you guys gotta look at it, okay? The carts,
Chris, why don't you come on up
yeah,
to this?
come on up, let people see your.
Chris Porter from Ecology.
My question is that with the, you know, the distribution of the carts before the services start have to be there, obviously. 2,000 solid waste carts plus 2,000 recycling carts is a lot of semis full of carts. And how are, you know, delivering 1 or 2 or a dozen seems to be okay, but how are we going to get them all to where they need to be?
We,
Seems like it needs more.
we have a company that does it. So every house will get a 64-gallon recycling, and then they have a list of what size garbage cart. And we did it in Pacifica, it was 13,000, and it went well. These are people that do this.
Do you have a flyer or something that can be laid on the week before garbage can that says, guess what, next week
What we're going
they
to
just show
do,
up?
no, what we're going to do is we put notice, we'll have notices on the bill that they're coming, but
Okay.
there's going to be 3 separate notices. And we found that the best way to do it, after we delivered in Pacifica, we delivered in El Granada, and now we're moving to Montara, the best way to do it is to attach it to the cart. Not to send it ahead of time, because if you send it ahead of time, by the time the cart gets there, no one can find it. So you attach it to the cart.
Okay.
So there'll be 1 flyer attached to the recycling cart that says exactly what goes in that cart. There's a lot of new things that are gonna be accepted in this program now. You put your cardboard in the cart, you don't have to put it on the side, everything goes in this cart. And on the reverse side of that will be the green waste pickup schedule for the next 13 months. And that will, because recycling will stay every week, green waste will be every other week, so that'll be right in it, and they're stiff card stock, so. Okay, on the other cart, on the garbage cart, there will be information about the garbage cart. There's going to be information about the drop-offs. Anything that's new, like that we're going to the 4-time bulky item, any new things will be on that. There will also be a note if you want to change the size cart, how to do it. That form will have another form stapled to it, which has 3 fluorescent colored stickers that say, "Take me." So if next, I'm gonna put it on you. Next week.
I was thinking about
Yeah, once you get your new cards, you put those stickers on your old cans that you want to get rid of, or your recycling bins, so they're just labeled, and at the next pickup, they're taken away and recycled. All those materials can be recycled. So how the breakdown is going to be, as Clemens was talking about, anyone now that has a 20-gallon cart will get a 20-gallon cart. Anyone that has a 30 to a 45 will get a 32-gallon. Anyone with a 46 and over or multiple carts will get a 64. And we've gotten a few calls since the 218 notice went out saying, gee, I want to reduce, and so we're taking all that into consideration. Tomorrow morning, if we agree on the contract tonight, I will run a list of the services that are subscribed to as of Friday morning and order the carts from that list. And we will have excess, so if someone wants to switch size carts, it'll be available to them.
Now, while it's in the contract, the one thing I would like, and I'd like it in the minutes, is if carts are broken or wind up, the maintenance of the carts. So if they get damaged and are unusable, they need to call you, unless that's in the instructions.
We can put that in the instructions. We can go ahead and put that in.
If they are lost and stolen or disappear, that there's X amount of.
One time that
One
we'll
time,
replace them.
Right.
After that, it will be at the customer's expense.
Right.
But that will be after discussion with Clemens
Right.
and
The other thing is,
myself.
Do you have grease pens so that they write the address on the cart,
Or can we spray paint them?
Well, I'm sure you can do that.
The carts stay with the house. So if you move out, the carts stay there. So yes, you can spray paint it, you can do whatever.
Well, it's just up in some other service areas, they have these lovely fat grease pens, and it stays on there through water and snow and ice and all that, but at least there's some way to mark them, and if they're not marked by you, then yeah, I would recommend, because that makes them less liable to grow legs and walk away, so.
I have to say, in the large amount of carts that we've had in Pacifica, we've had no theft.
That's good.
And in Granada, we've had no theft. So,
Well,
I've had theft of yard boxes, but not of carts.
Well, that may, because I've in another place, I've lost a big 64-gallon or 90-gallon green waste, and it's like, what can you possibly do with that? It's not like a conversation piece for the kitchen.
They
or
use it
something.
to move things.
So, okay, thank you. That was the questions I had.
I need to mention that a couple who were in the audience earlier came to me while I stepped out and mentioned that they live here in Montara and wanted to talk to someone about offering garbage service. So I suggested that they talk to Clemens in the morning. So I mentioned it.
I hope they have a big pickup truck.
Well, they asked me to mention it, I mentioned it, but they didn't stay for the item, so.
Thank you.
And while we're at it, we should probably remind the audience too, that if they're watching and not asleep, that the big dumpster.
Debris box.
Debris boxes, part of the franchise is that they've gotta go through. I occasionally have seen, now you can bring your own truck in and if you haul it off yourself, that's.
If you're doing your own construction and your own gardening or whatever, you can bring in your own truck as long as you're doing the work yourself. But you cannot hire a different company besides Recology of the Coast to bring a debris box in. And people will call me and say, well, you know, we could get a better deal from this person, that person. Well, it may be, it's because this person is not giving anything back to the district and it's not under the requirements of the district. But we've changed once the new rates go into place. We've changed how we are charging for debris boxes. We will be charging a flat fee for the pickup and delivery, and then we will be charging a price per ton at the dump site.
What about the question we had during the negotiations about this folding, do-it-yourself?
We just don't have the truck to do
You don't have
it.
the
One
truck
of the
to get
equipment
it?
for that.
Okay, any more questions? Chris? Scott? Jim? Okay, I have a couple questions. I wanted to point out, in reference to into the construction waste and the debris boxes, that recycling construction waste is on the shoulders of the contractor or the homeowner, and it's generally a condition of your permit. So if you don't do it, and if you don't do it with a company that you know you can trust to do that recycling, like Recology, then you're leaving yourself open to violations of your building permit. And it's, the county's pretty serious about this stuff because they're under a lot of pressure from the state to make sure that there's recycling. And speaking of construction waste, we've been doing some projects at our house, and we have some surplus treated lumber, you know, that either brown or green stuff with the perforations in it. And Ed hadn't been able to get a hold of you, but he called your offices and was told your recycling yard does not take it. He called the county, and they said they don't take it. Nobody in San Mateo County takes it, and that the closest place for us as homeowners to take care of it is in Livermore. Now, I think this is a pretty serious public health issue. We can't just dump it in our regular waste. We don't want to burn it. That's putting arsenic and heavy metals into the air. And yet the only place we can, and it's necessary by building code for things like decks, foundations, stem walls, foundation pieces. So what do? Is our only option to take it to Livermore?
I think that there's a place in San Francisco that takes that, and I will double check and get back to you.
If you would be so
I will.
kind, because I think that's, I understand you have some issues because this, and for the audience, you can go down to various lumber stores and buy things like old railroad ties. What they don't tell you is it's toxic waste. And when you're done with it, you can't dispose of it anywhere. You can't even, you're not even supposed to bury it. Again, because it's heavy metals and petroleum products. So there's some issues going on here. I'm not asking Recology to take care of it. I think I will be going to our state representatives and asking them what to do, because I'm concerned about this stuff getting dropped in our ditches and woods and that kind of thing.
Maybe what you ought to do is donate it to the county to use a public park to build some stuff there.
Well, in fact, they mentioned last night at the meeting that they had quite a few treated lumber 4x4s that they were looking for somebody to take.
They have their own supply.
They have their own supply.
You brought the treated lumber up. I've been working with a lady for the last 2 days on what to do with that popcorn ceiling.
Oh, that
And
may or may
because-
not contain asbestos.
So we've gotten as far as finding a place that she could send a sample to for $40 to find out whether it has asbestos in it or not. And now we're moving to the next part. But if she's doing this on her own, usually the contractor will be able to find out where to take these different things. But if you're a person doing it on your own, so what Recology is trying to do is identify these different items that people are having a problem, either that they're not recyclable and they're somewhat hazardous. And we're gonna be making a flyer.
Thank
And
you.
sending them to people, once we can identify ourselves exactly, what you have to do. And, maybe Livermore might be it, but I do think there's a place in San Francisco for the lumber.
Okay, thank you. So,
My other house I'm working on has got popcorn ceiling.
Now, I'll
but
give
that's
you
in
that
Oregon.
info.
It's a long way before I get to that part of the house.
Good. So, I missed the introduction. We're going to be taking this up on the 19th.
Well, you haven't made the recommendation, and I'd suggest that, we have a review from our legal counsel, we have a resolution that is provided. We've essentially received the signal that the contract can be approved as it stands.
Is this Dave's version that went to Recology?
Yes.
And do we have the non-performance clause put back in?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so your recommendation now is
Where's that beautiful formula of ours?
the rate calculating formula?
Yeah.
This needs attachment.
Bill, if you would closely look at the rate setting formula, it looks like it's.
Well, I drew a flow chart for it, so I'd like to, I don't have it with me, I should have brought it, but,
That can go in the final version.
yeah, I'd like to attach
Mhm.
that, because some poor schmuck in 2 years, 3 years is gonna really enjoy just having that.
So you would like to attach this to the contract?
Yeah, but I saw franchise fees and other fees, but I did not see a section
The
that
rate
talked
setting
about rate.
mechanism.
Yeah, and because it was a word, it was a verbiage paragraph that was very complicated and required a flow chart to understand.
We're gonna hunt you down. You're gonna be doing it for life, the
No,
calculation.
no, this is my last contract.
Mine too.
You
How
guys
many have we done together?
I was gonna say, you guys grew up
How many
together.
have we done together?
Everyone since,
I know, but we're talking to each other now.
yeah, but that's true, didn't start that way. Ever since your lawyers, your first lawyer died, since that point.
That's when you've been talking to each other.
Yeah, well, no, their lawyer died, and that's what started the whole mess. So, be careful.
I don't need
So
to-
that's the only thing that I would like to physically see, is where that silly rate paragraph is that was in the previous contract.
I don't want to approve anything until we have it as a final, complete document. I understand the constraints you're under, Chris, but if you could explain to your, boss that it would be bad policy for this district to, approve a contract of this length and this magnitude without having every single piece there. And I'd like the entire board to be able to look at it
Mhm.
closely.
Exhibit E.
Okay, I will not be available for the meeting on the 19th.
Oh, so you can send your boss?
I don't think he'll come.
Oh.
Tell him I'll be nice to him.
Okay, Exhibit E.
Exhibit E is the rate, now I can't find it.
See separate
I thought it was an
Separate
exhibit.
document.
Yeah, it says rate adjustment,
Do you have Schedule E or Exhibit E? Because mine says see separate document.
oh, it's exhibit C.
I don't,
Yeah, I got exhibit, yeah, that's what it says, so we gotta get that in there.
Yeah.
Okay, what,
I'll send you the flowchart.
And I will comment for the audience and the board, one of the fundamental changes in this contract with Recology, providing the recycling and waste bins, is that, as Chris said, they go with the house. Essentially, we are renting them. They're part of your rate increase, is the rent of these. If one gets stolen or broken, Recology will replace it. Please don't replace it with your own 32-gallon round guy. It won't work.
match up to the truck?
It won't match up to their trucks, which is what they're going to be using to expedite and speed up and make more efficient our waste and recycling services. So the payback for Recology on these cans is, I think, never ending. They're very expensive. And I see that Bill needs to fill out a yellow speaker slip.
I thought one was good for the whole night.
No.
I'll fill out another one.
Okay.
It's a simple question.
Come on up and ask your question.
It's like 3 words. 4 words. Are the containers raccoon proof? Because mine are constantly being pulled apart. We have bungee cords upon bungee cords.
There's, I'll tell you the tricks, call me. And they will be.
I mean, I live just uphill from a creek, so, and so do you, so, I mean, you know the number of raccoons that go through our town.
Bill's point is very well taken.
And
So,
there's-
so what is the answer?
If you take a bungee cord, I mean, there are not locks. The lids are pretty sturdy. So we have very minimal problem in Pacifica, even up in the hills in the back. If you cross the bungee cords, pepper is another thing. If you put pepper around your can, they don't seem to like it, and also ammonia.
I mean, I wanna add to that, the receptacles are constructed such that the raccoons can't simply push the lid off.
Right.
It is hinged, and it's pretty heavy.
Mhm.
The containers themselves are pretty difficult to push over. They're very well constructed.
Send pictures.
That's why I'm careful. I bet raccoons can figure out how to get in there, but I think they're much easier to raccoon-proof than what I've been using so far, the style where you can just
Okay.
push off the lid.
I've been using pepper for 15 years and just sprinkle it around and it works just fine. Also sprinkle it on the inside a little bit and they just, they move on to better sources.
Okay, let's move on to another agenda item.
Madam President.
We can't approve this until
Right.
we see Exhibit
One
D and Exhibit E.
question, one question before I leave. I really wanna get the cards ordered for the district. Can I ask the board if there's any member that really has a fundamental problem with this contract? That it's just a matter of housekeeping to get everything together?
Are you looking for a straw poll on approval?
Kind of, so I can order the cards.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair because you're gonna order 2,000 or 4,000.
I'm gonna spend quite a bit of money, which my boss does not want me to spend until this is signed.
Well, you
Two
could come by and
thousand-
tell us at the next meeting.
2,000 times $200.
Sure. So,
I'm fine with it.
I'm
No,
fine.
2,000 times 2 times. There's
So-
2 cards for each place.
Right.
I'm okay with it too.
There's been a lot of work put into this, and we've brought it to the public more than once, and I think we've got to do our checking of the.
Our housekeeping,
the-
yeah, absolutely.
Dotting the i's and crossing
Mhm.
the t's, or vice versa, but,
It's gonna happen.
Mhm.
no, I think this is,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, we know, we did hear from members of the public, and we got a letter from one of the members of the public recently about the race and waiver structure.
Speaking of which.
This is something that we're always looking for a way to have the most equitable distribution.
Mhm.
We have to pick something,
Mhm.
and what we picked, sounds to me like we're gonna try for a while, so.
Mhm.
Okay, and for the audience and the public in the room, we got a letter from a ratepayer who said she only uses a 10-gallon can, and she doesn't like being, her rate starting at the 20-gallon can size, she'd like a further reduction. I asked Chris to please respond to that, and Chris, would you do that here? The summary, before you launch into it, is there's a lot of different costs rolled into that $10, that 20-gallon can, but if you could explain further.
A 20-gallon cart really doesn't even pay the expenses. You know, there's fuel, there's driver's costs, there's benefits, there's truck repair, you know, on and on and on, office staff. And the only area where there would be any difference in a 20-gallon cart versus a 64-gallon cart would be at the dump site. Now, with a 20-gallon cart, a lot of people are using compactors. So really, the weight of a 20 isn't really that much difference from a weight of a 32. But even with this rate increase, Recology is still in the hole significantly. But that's okay, we're moving forward. And you know, we're working with the district, we're longtime partners. The letter that Catherine and Bob both asked me to respond to and send to them for review, I did say that the customer was able to use a 20-gallon cart or a 10-gallon cart because of all the additional programs that Recology offers. We offer recycling, we offer green waste, we offer drop-off, we offer curbside pickup. So there's a lot of ways to delete waste out of your can and out of the waste stream because of the other programs that we do offer. And I thought that was the kind of the most significant aspect of that letter.
Well, what I found out today in some research is in 2008, the per person, not per household, per person average daily waste production is 4.5 pounds, which comes close to 32 pounds a week. So that's what we in 2008 per person.
Was that on this district or average state?
United States of.
Oh, wow.
A US average 4.5 pounds per day per person. So, you know, if you're doing less than that, thank you. And it doesn't mean everyone's doing it, but so a 20-gallon instead of 32-gallon per week is already quite a reduction from an average, a very well below average. And I have no doubt that people are doing that. But it's, you know, 32 gallons is what we all kind of produce.
Okay,
We
so,
should learn to read it.
so, Chris, you have the straw poll, you can make your order.
Are you okay with it?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to say, really, a final comment. I know it's before the contract is signed, but I want to thank Chris for, you know, the patience and the kindness, and, you know, these are reasonable rates, and this is a good thing for the district. I thank staff, Clemens and the staff, and the Solid Waste Committee for having got through this contract, and I think it's
Those of
really
us who
good.
love trash and recycling, we can talk to you anytime.
And we're all pals still. Barely.
Moving on, review and possible action concerning district strategic plan. Let me make sure I've got that in the right order.
Yeah, that's correct, I believe. at the August first meeting, the board, stated interest in the preparation of a strategic plan for the district. And, I believe that's actually very good timing. We've, operated the water system since 10 years. We still have to really plan a huge party for that. We actually have some very good had some, very good successes, as Scott pointed out. We're kind of in the end stretch of a number of projects. We've completed one tank, another tank is under construction. A third tank is in the planning process and scheduled to be erected next year. We've replaced extensive pipes, other system improvements that are listed and shown on the walls. That's just on the infrastructure side, I think, where we made tremendous success. I believe it was a fairly interesting time as the district purchased the water system, and the goals were, some were set. The goal meaning a water system inherited in disrepair had to be fixed up. And I think we're really, I don't think we lack work at this time, but I think we're really in a time of change right now, where we have to orientate ourselves on the water side. And I think the same could be said for the sewer side. We just completed a new contract with the trash services. So all of our three functions, I think, have some sort of a closure that we reach. And so I believe it's a good timing to look at providing the first, as far as I know, strategic plan for the district ever. Interesting enough, I got an email today that stated that the school district is going through a similar process in the near future. So I think this is really something where a lot of good can come out of. We have a mission statement, for example, that is now 10 years old. I really think we need to look around and see where we need to focus our resources on. So we contacted Barbara Gonzalez Consulting Group, BHI Management, Crabtree Consulting, Economic Planning Systems, Harrison Associated, and Rauch Communication Consultants, and received 3 proposals from, I believe, all very reputable firms. That's Barbara Gonzalez, BHI Consulting, and Rauch Communications. So we have, I think we were also pretty clear in our instructions on how this process should look like. I understand this is something where we really want to work very closely with, staff wants to work really closely with the board. The directions for proposal were essentially that we are looking not only at a strategic planning process, but also at receiving a plan that then can actually be used as monitoring tool after the fact. It was, I think it is important that we actually look at involving the community, and we know that cannot be done with simply one meeting. So we instructed the consultants to prepare proposals according to that general plan, and received a suggested cost from Barbara and Gonzalez for $12,000, from Rauch Communication of around $16,000, and BHI is the most expensive with $21,795. 2 of the proposals, that's from Rauch Communications, that's wrong in the staff report, Rauch Communications and BHI Consulting are very detailed, and I think fit really the needs of the district. I have to say I had extensive communications with both of them, and I think they're, both, could be both very good partners. I have to say that I think the BHI Consulting, proposal, and this goes also back to verbal descriptions, is, probably the most complete. The recommendation here again is to work as closely as possible with the district board. We want to make sure the full board feels comfortable with this process. The recommendation is to invite one or two potential consultants to attend a future board meeting to have a discussion with the board members and discuss their approach and answer any questions the board might have.
Okay, gentlemen.
I like the idea of having multiple folks give us a presentation, what they will do for us. I'd like to see how they deal and interact with people, because that's what's gonna take a lot of, what's gonna take to be successful.
Okay. Chris?
I'd requested this be agendized, and I think my primary concern, I like the work, thank you for doing this. My concern is the timing. I'd like to see this tabled and brought back to the board after the election. Because I think that the election is going to be a barometer of some of the strategic choices that the district is facing.
What would your comment be if we did the groundwork and then got it ready to initiate in January? So that,
Same comment, I'd like to have the new board involved in interviewing these people, because they're the folks that are gonna be working with them.
okay, gentlemen?
I wanna just quickly point out, you might see in the timeline that the suggested timeline that I gave was that the strategic plan is formed after the election. So I just wanna be very, very clear on this. And I think that makes absolute sense to do it. This is absolutely right. You should do this process afterwards.
Okay, Scott?
I like what I read, I like the suggestion to bring it back. I'm ready to have them present anytime.
I will say that the candidates for the election can certainly attend our board meeting and ask questions and give their opinions. This board, as some have complained, is very liberal in allowing public information, sharing public information and comment in a back and forth. Scott, I'm sorry, not Scott, Jim.
No, I agree. I think this is great. Thomas has done a good job with this, and I'm good for any time you wanna do this at any point. So, yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Should we have them all come on the same evening? Should we stretch it out over, with 3 different presentations on 3 evenings?
I'd like to suggest that we have them here on the same evening and that we give them about 15-20 minutes each. They can't pitch it in 15 minutes. Work with someone who can. And then leave some time for some Q&A.
Who would you suggest to invite? The 2 that are highlighted, or all 3?
I thought that the 2 you highlighted had much more detail, and we had already kind of dialed into some of the issues that have been on our minds, so I'd be content with 2, but 3, just one more presentation.
I must say I'm a little concerned that Barbara and Gonzalez, who have locations in 3 different cities in California, didn't say who's going to be doing the strategic plan. And so I have some concern. I did notice that BHI, the principal, does do that, does do the interviews. And I must say, I was looking on the third to see who was going to be doing the interviews as well. I'd like to have the person who's doing the interviews come and, speak to us. Not just not just the salesperson for the strategic plan.
I thought it was interesting that, of who they were thinking was appropriate people to engage with, that BHI included partner agencies, and Rauch included Gary Warhafter of the Montara Moss Beach Water Improvement Association, which to me seemed a little odd, or maybe there was a lot of emphasis on that, and I didn't see anything in terms of looking for detailed participation in other areas, for instance, parks. I'd like to see more community involvement, giving us feedback on the park aspect of that.
I think that's a hot issue right now. I think
I would hope these would all be starting points and that we could get together and figure out that it actually, both sets of key people to talk with sound right, so that's something we should definitely explore. I mean, Gary's got a lot of thought put into this. I definitely want to solicit his thought. Partner, neighboring agencies probably have some thoughts too, so I like the idea. It's,
I'd like to make sure that, one of the things that's, I know that we are more interacting with the ratepayers from a water standpoint because of the weekly, the monthly, bi-monthly bills and things. But, I don't want to diminish all of the requirement for sewer. Okay, we're not a water company.
not just.
That's CCWD. We provide other services. Now, the fact that sewer is running smoother and has less issues, other than we've got to replace a lot of pipes and stuff, it's just construction kind of
so
stuff.
we've got vision for
Yeah.
ways that can evolve in pretty substantial ways, so this would be a great time to get some of that formulated.
I'd like to make sure we focus on all our aspects, not just one.
Just so you know, I was counting on it. Because we're not,
And they should know that when they make the presentation. I don't want to see a presentation to a water company. I want to see a presentation to MWSD and what they will do.
I was pleased to see a number of the comments that were very, obviously, somebody listened and wrote some things down.
Okay, let's schedule this then, at least for October, no sooner. And let's make it a point to.
No sooner.
No sooner,
Okay, just.
Well, the 19th would be the sooner than
right,
October.
that's right, I don't
Right,
want
the
it in,
question is-
I don't want it in September, and I'd like to make sure that we invite all of the candidates. Specifically, we can get their email addresses so that they can, be part and party to this, whether or not they are elected. They have taken a very serious interest in the future of this district, and it's, I'm very thankful that people have been willing to do that. Perhaps we should also consider, I'd like, maybe figuring out, how to excerpt the videotape so that it gets onto Montara Fog, so that there's wider distribution of this concept and the ideas. We won't need to make a decision about who we select that night. I think we'd all like to be able to think about it.
I'd like to understand what the advantage is to not waiting until after the board election has occurred and the new members are seated. I mean, you're talking about a long-term
We're talking
strategic
We're
plan.
talking about a presentation from consultants, and if everyone's present during the presentation of the consultants, we've gotten that out of the way.
Okay, so is it that critically important that you don't wanna wait 30 days?
It's more than 30 days.
No, it's not. You're saying you wanna do it
People-
in October, and the
November.
election is November.
December. People aren't seated until the first
Yeah,
meeting in
but we'll
December.
know who's on the board.
And I would like to be able to get this process started in January or February.
Okay, and I'm saying, do you really want, is it that important to you that you've got, that you're trying to get this kicked off before the election?
Well, which is it?
Are you
Which-
implying that we're making this an election
No,
issue?
No, I'm making it the point that when you have seated board members, they approach it and have input and responsibility for the selection. That's what I want to give that board.
The board decision doesn't happen until they're sworn in sometime in December and January, so we're not gonna get started in January.
Okay, I'll
So-
make a motion that this whole thing be tabled
I'm
until
really
after
curious.
the election.
I'm really curious, when you brought
Do
this
we,
to us.
do we
I
have,
just
a
have
wait,
a
do we
motion.
have a
Just make
second?
one.
So
I'm not seconding that.
I'll second it for the purposes of discussion.
All right, so, geez, Chris, when you brought it to us, it was all fired and important to get done immediately.
I
And-
didn't bring it to you. Catherine did.
You just said you asked to have this on the agenda.
No, yes, I mean, you initiated the idea of, let's have a strategic plan,
Yes, I did.
right? And then it was codified into the budget. I had a concern about that because I wanted to have the process laid out and the timing laid out. Your position, if I understood you correctly, was this is just a general placeholder, right?
That I'd like to get it
Yeah.
in the budget so
And
I can
requested
rely
it be-
upon
I
it coming.
requested it be agendized solely for the purpose of suggesting that it would make more sense to have a long-term strategic plan with the new board.
I'm sorry, I
Have that-
misunderstood what you were suggesting. When you did that, I thought you were pressing this with some urgency, and I thought we agreed to do that. So,
No.
forgive me for misunderstanding, but, as somebody who very much hopes to still be here in, January,
Well, you will be, you're not up for
well,
election,
I don't know if I'll wake up tomorrow, so I'm hoping
for Christ's sake.
But you
every
do-
day so far, but you know, I'm not taking that for
But
granted.
you do drive on the freeway.
But, you know, life will go on for whoever's left, come January, and if, honestly, if candidates can't be bothered to come to a meeting where we're gonna talk about this kind of thing, then okay, that's fine. If they choose to miss it, fine. A bunch of us are gonna be here in October. I think we have fine time to hear from consultants. It's gonna be memorialized. I like the idea of calling out the video separately and making it available, so should somebody have a prior commitment and they can't possibly make it, great, they have an opportunity to at least see, and then when it comes time to actually vote on who's gonna be doing it and how the process is actually gonna be conducted, I'm understanding you're saying that would be in January. That seems like a reasonable timeframe for me.
January or February, I'd like to get it done when people are able, in the district, and able to attend and able to
So,
participate.
the work of the district doesn't come to a screeching halt every time we get, you know, a few weeks out from an election. It's where we are now, we've got work to do. Some of us intend to continue this for as long as we're able, and Catherine and I aren't up for election. We've got plenty to contribute to this, and I'd like to see us be ready to hit the ground running at the start of the new year with this.
Bill, I'd like to hear from you.
I see this as an issue that the timeline is not so critical that it couldn't wait for 30 days, so that you would have a unified board, you would know who all the members are, and that everybody could be working in conjunction with each other to follow up on this.
But
So-
30 days would put us at the beginning of October, at our first meeting in October.
What we're talking about doing,
So-
having presentations.
So you're really talking about 90 days.
I guess that would be correct, yeah.
Okay, what we're talking about is whether or not to have the presentations next month.
Yeah.
The presentations, there's not gonna be a vote. They're gonna come, they're gonna show their wares, they're gonna talk about the process, they're gonna answer questions from the board members, from the staff, from the public members. Everybody gets to participate in that. So I don't understand what the reason would be for delaying that.
Okay, so then, would it be appropriate to form and excuse me if I don't have the terminologies right, but an ad hoc committee that consists of the present board and the new board members, so they would sit down and talk about this, because, you know, it's different being in the audience than it is to be sitting there when a presentation is made.
I'd like to make a comment here, and that is that, is essentially, the plan is going to be somewhat connected also to the capital needs for the district. Now, we just approved a 5-year CIP, and we all understand that. We also understand that this is a document that, a living document that will be revised every year. We are in the process of making some significant financial decisions, sooner than later. A very big water tank is planned for installation. A treatment plant is planned for construction. And I think a strategic plan can actually help us verify if those investments are correct, if there should be changes made in general to the direction that the district is taking. So what I'm concerned with is that I'd like to see the plan prepared in a timeline that allows us to guarantee that the large financial decisions that the district is about to make are the right steps.
You know, so when this topic came up, I don't see putting together the plan as upending a number of the key elements that have been part of the Public Works plan that this board has ratified and, you know, worked hard to build. So I want to caution against any notion, at least on my part. I think the benefit, and it's pretty well spelled out in the communication that we got from the consultants. This is about helping us coalesce a bunch of ideas that need coalescing, that we may have in our heads, but we may need to get on paper. We may need to have discussions with the community about, well, like, for example, the 3 sock of water. We've got a lot of timing on that. This is a topic I can go on ad hoc anytime for any duration you want. I'd like to see it distilled down into something where perhaps we can get something distilled into a plan where we can go, yep, we pretty much are all heading in that direction. I think it's not gonna be that hard to do, but on the things where we've got tangible, very specific plans, like big water tank, we're really, I'm not calling that into question at all. What I wanna do is take a bunch of the amorphous and get it shaped, and then perhaps examine some of the long-term things that haven't been examined in a while, that maybe, say, with like recycled water, technology has changed a lot, and it's really worth coming at that and looking at that, or like we do at SAM from time to time, and talking about the cogen, recapturing the methane that comes off the digesters and using that for generation of electricity, or solar, or whatever. You know, there's a number of things that when we get enough people at the table, and looking at the processes that all 3 of these describe, we're gonna have a lot of things put on the table. What I don't see is upending the PWP. I'm just not seeing that as a likely outcome.
Jim, Bob.
Well,
Jim Bob.
if we wait for this side of the table to hear any, which of the consultants we could use, that will be December 5th, which means you will hear that. We normally only have 1 meeting in December, which means decision of which of number A or B or C is the right one will happen sometime in January. And that's the decision to proceed, which means before we get started and they can schedule things, it'll be February or March. We're talking about somebody saying, this is how I facilitate, and a board and a public ask questions, and the board will make a decision with public input to B is the best one for that, or A is, or C is. We're not talking about making a decision on whether or not we gotta gold plate something, or whether we wanna spend 1,000 on something. We're strictly talking about, do we want A or B or C? And I see nothing wrong in that decision, the presentations and listening to them happening in October. And
Where are you seeing the vote on which one? You're not seeing it in October, are you?
no,
I'm not.
I'm
So I just
seeing
wanna double
a
check.
presentation of who it is and whether or not the board can, if it wants, to wait until December 5th, if you wanna wait and do nothing for the 2 months, or you may wanna have some additional questions, I don't know, but I don't see any danger in having A, B, and C present to me, and if it makes, Bill, you can have my seat, I'll sit out there.
Matt, may I speak?
Please.
In listening to this, it would seem to me that, it would be a reasonable thing is to invite all the candidates. If there's a sense of urgency about this, invite all the candidates, but also to provide them with the packets that you see.
Sure.
You know, so that in essence, we're looking at the same thing.
Every member of the public has access to this packet at the meeting and.
Before the meeting.
Well, we try, but.
Yeah, but I mean.
Well, before the meeting, it's available here at the office. The minute that's available to any board member, it's available to the public. That's not new, and that's a requirement.
Okay, so that to facilitate that, somehow make sure that all the candidates get this.
Yes.
So that they have a chance to look at it before the meeting, so that, they can, speaking only for myself, so that I can understand the process better. The other one is that, is this, would this be a meeting in which, the filling out of yellow cards, for the purpose of discussion of that particular agenda item, would be waived?
It can be, one of the biggest reasons we have them is to make sure that for the minutes, names are spelled correctly.
Okay.
And so that people who speak aren't, inadvertently, their comments are not inadvertently diminished. It's.
So then we'll fill it out in advance and.
Sure.
That's it.
Okay, that's my input.
What about the possibility that there's a DEF here? In other words, this is the first time I've heard that you've gone to specific proposals. I've had no opportunity to vet against other contacts I have, what experience they've had with strategic planning consultants, or if they'd be interested in being engaged to do that for this
Well,
district.
And I agree, that's why it's not a decision tonight. I certainly, if you have others, one of the important things about strategic planning is finding somebody who specifically knows the field. We certainly don't want to have a hospital strategic planner helping us with
Sure.
this. One of the things I'd like to see, and I would like to continue discussing and ultimately adoption of this ad hoc committee of all the candidates, is for the candidates and this board member and our staff to create a list of stakeholders to make sure. That's one of the things, Chris, that I see is the biggest problem, is making sure we have enough people. I will also note, before I call on Bob, that I started asking to have this included in the budget about a year ago. This is not suddenly sprung on people, but I was not going to expend staff time and energy until I knew we could pay for it, and that we had the board decision to do it. I think as this district is in our 60th year as a sewer district and in our 10th year as a water district, I think it's very important every 10 years to talk to the community about what they want from their electeds and what they want to see the board doing for the next 5 or 10 years. Because the board policies, the board procedures should be directed, in my humble opinion, by the community, not by the desires of the individuals who sit on the board. This board is elected by the community to serve the community, not to serve our own personal interests.
And you're about to get 3 affirmations or decisions on how well the community has accepted that.
That's true.
Okay.
You know, yes, and we're not deaf to the community this whole time absent an election. And so, you know, forgive me if I'm not just, I'm not gonna hold up on the things that are of, the election's not magical, and the public has the ability to reach out to us in a number of ways all the time, and to some extent they do, and we've got, I'll be interested to see what happens with the election, but the election is actually almost barely none of this board's business. And so I'm attentive to it, but I'm also, well, it's not.
It's every bit this board's business.
not
You're
the-
elected officials.
No, the fact that we have been elected, but the election itself, our responsibility pretty much ends at funding it and facilitating whatever public input needs to happen for it. But determining the outcome of it is not this board's business. Being aware of it, yes. Being sensitive to it, yes. But it is not the sole piece of input to the board about what the public thinks about the way it's conducting its business. And, you know,
Okay.
people know how to reach us and can and do. And so I'm not gonna act like it's some miraculous revealing of truth that had no opportunity to be revealed prior to that. So I understand you've got an interest in the outcome. I think we're all curious to see how it goes. But, you know, if we continue to conduct the public's business in public and invite them in for things like this when it comes to the vision for the agency, you know, I don't think we stop going just because the blessed event is gonna happen.
Jim?
You know, so Chris, you have some other people that you might want to, other organizations or other groups that may want to.
Query, yes.
Okay, so you know something, this is getting very complicated, and I think that having an open board meeting with candidates is complicated. I think that we should just go ahead and wait until after the election to have this discussion. Give Chris, you know, even though some of us may not, you know, some of us may be lame duck on this board, we still have rights as board members until the very end of our period on this board. But nevertheless, you know, we want to represent our constituents in this district, and Chris is a board member until the election also, and
Actually, until the swearing in
the swearing in.
December.
So Chris wants to have some other people possibly considered. So I think we should give Chris a chance and then postpone this until discussion until after the election.
Okay, just a minute.
It's getting too complicated
I suggest
otherwise.
we vote on tabling it, but I would also suggest that, Chris, send the names to Clemens, and Clemens, I see that, can get,
I'm still waiting.
okay, can get a proposal from, other, companies that are interested in doing this and add it to the pile. Bob?
Well, on the facilitation about experience, for process improvements, I do facilitations, and it is actually not a requirement that you're an expert in the field. A good facilitator can facilitate you to your goal with or without the knowledge. They know how to do that, they're supposed to. That's what a good facilitator does. I'm a little concerned, I mean, we have 3. Chris, what is it about the addition that you think needs to happen to the 3 that are there, proposed?
I know nothing about these folks. I've
Well,
seen
guess
no
what? I don't know a
reference.
damn thing about what you're gonna bring up.
Well, that's right. That's why you run through a vetting process.
That's
Right.
part of,
All I'm
asking for the
saying is,
proposals, that's part of
this is
asking
the
for the
first time I've
presentations.
heard that there are specific firms being solicited. I'd like an opportunity to see if there are others that ought to be added to that pool. Not that they be treated any differently than these. You know, it's entirely up to the majority of this board.
Clemens, how did you come across these three?
Went to the California Special Districts Association webpage, and essentially, if you compare the CSDA webpage, you'll see that all the consultants that I contacted are listed as in the vendors section under planning.
My suggestion is that any board member
I
who
think you
has,
suggested it.
I think it's a great source. It's not the only one.
so, all right.
Okay, let's make a decision pretty quick,
well,
guys.
I'd like to finish,
Oh.
actually. I mean, we get to a lot of, don't interrupt me, and I'm
Okay,
being very
okay.
patient. My suggestion is whatever board members, however many suggestions you have, you get them to Clemens, and on the 19th, we take the pile that we have and decide to ask for presentations from 3 or 4 or 5 or 1,000 on the first meeting in October. So,
You mean November?
no, I'm
No.
saying October.
You just said to get to
The
Tim by
19th.
the 19th of October.
No,
19th
September.
of September, our
Oh,
next
I
meeting.
thought you said October, I'm sorry.
The next meeting, Clemens gets all the names from any of us who thinks they have somebody in their pocket that they want to present, and we make a decision on the 19th, whether on the first meeting in October, there's 3 or 4 or more. So,
Let's vote on the motion, which is to table this item. All those in favor?
Until after the election.
Until after the
Do
election.
you have the
All-
specific language?
Well,
of what I said?
wait, no, so Bob.
well, then that is a motion on the table, so. vote on
That's
it.
the
Can you
motion,
read
but
back the motion
before,
on the
before we
table?
do that, before we vote, so.
Judy,
go-
do you
go
have
through
the
those dates
motion?
one more time, Bob, for me.
I'm sorry, what?
Go through those dates one more time, your scheme.
In the second meeting in September,
Right.
all board members will have whatever their suggestions are to Clemens, and we will present them and review them
September.
on the 19th of September, and we will take the 3 plus whatever else is added on the 19th,
Wait,
and
wait,
we will
wait,
request those
Of
to make a
September.
presentation.
wait, in the second meeting of September, everyone's gonna present their candidates.
Just in paper, just on
Yeah,
paper.
And then we're going to.
We will take these three and then any additional ones that people have investigated or brought forward.
And then.
Board
and then-
members or
And then
community.
interview them in the first meeting in October.
And have them make their presentation of
Presentation.
what they're gonna do in the first meeting in October.
And it may not be possible that they can do it on such short notice.
We may have to do it in the first and second meeting of October, split them, I mean.
And-
Okay.
And the original plan is what?
The motion on the table
This
is-
is do nothing.
the motion we are discussing, my notes, which are not verbatim, are to table this item until after the election, which would be until the first meeting in December.
December 5th.
So by not tabling it, we give Chris a chance to present his possible
I
vet.
think either way,
vet.
I mean, I've got an opportunity to get it to Clemens, so that's fine, and I appreciate your timeline. And I can easily do that. My issue is the people that are engaging this firm are the people who are on the board after the election.
Everything that we talked about was that decision would happen January.
Pardon?
Everything we talked about was that would happen in January.
No, I
Because-
think we were talking about the starting the stakeholder meetings in January, not making the decision on who's going to be
I'm sorry, I
hired.
said repeatedly that I was understanding that we were not talking about taking a vote until January.
Okay,
Can Judy, can you read back what I said? Okay.
So, but you can reiterate the motion, that works just fine.
Okay, my motion is that the decision for engagement with a strategic planning firm be made by the board following the seating of the new board members in December. It's
that was,
intentionally leaving you room so that you can have people present ahead of time.
okay, I will second that. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. And I'm
We all agree on
glad,
something, we should quit now.
I'm glad we're going on the strategic plan. It's something I have wanted, Chris, actually, I started talking about budgeting for it at the end of last year. I've been talking about it for about 3 years. Review and possible action concerning district website update.
So far, the district website has been operated with combined efforts of Director Village and staff. So I think it's actually interesting that we never spent any money on the webpage. So this year's budget contains $3,000 anticipated to be spent on upgrades to the site. So the item is requested to be on the agenda by Director Thorlock through the board president. So this item is for board discussion.
Okay. Scott and I discussed this with a potential candidate today. I'd like Scott to report back on.
Given that this is my agenda item, maybe I ought to say something?
I thought you'd like to hear what our discussion with
No,
potential candidate
I'd
had
like to
been.
frame what my issue was, and then I'd like to hear from that.
Certainly.
Okay, so my issue came up because in the budget process, I requested that we front-end the budget, front-load it with that $3,000, so it's spent early in the process, because my perception was that we are behind the times in terms of our website, both the accuracy of the information presented and the way it's generally laid out. And I talked to someone that gave us an estimate of $3,000. That's where that number came from. So my issue is not whether it's done or not. My issue is the timing.
Okay, and I'd like to get the name of that person.
We've already got it. I reported it out in the meeting.
The one from Ashland.
Yeah.
It's the part that
It was
used
the
to be
former
part of.
partner in CoSite.net.
Oh, okay.
And we actually have a proposal.
I'm
in
sorry, I
the
don't
comments
recall
it's
a
got.
name, but I've known a lot of the people from CoSite.net.
I'll try and look it up for you. I didn't keep it in my mind.
No, I think maybe I just phased out during that part, but I don't remember the name, and I figure I probably remember. Well, so we met with a consultant today. I had to phone in, but we had a good conversation. And covered a lot of ground, and let me start by saying that, well, I mean, having spent as much time as I have with this thing and heard from many wonderful supporters of the district over time, the key issues have been around, in particular, the speed of the site, and that especially, really only in relation to the larger documents that are on the site. The smaller documents on the site, no one ever talks about the speed because it's more than adequate for that. I've been very attentive over the years to try to make sure that staff did what staff was able to do, but to be attentive to the fact that our staff is spread very thin and very busy doing lots of things. So where there's been interest in staff members individually saying, yes, I'd like to take on some of that. George Irving, for a while, was the one who got documents uploaded to the site. We've had various...
Just so people who are new here, George Irving was our previous district manager. He started out as the part-time district manager when we were a sewer district, and he transitioned with us for quite a few years into our existence as a water and sewer district.
So George and some of the other staffers over the years have done things. Presently, we've got it worked out where Clemens and I are sharing some of the load of getting documents up. Clemens has taken over the responsibility for getting the videos online. I did that for a number of years. And so where staff has been able to and inclined to and desirous of, I've provided enough training that that's been able to happen. But, so where we are right now on the PDFs for the full agendas, this is actually one where, I started on tackling the issue of the full packet size back when I created the website, I don't know, 97 or 98, I don't remember which year. But, at the time, I did it by taking all the documents used to produce the packet and recreating those in a form that would work as HTML. And the tools just weren't there, took up just a lot of time. So if you look all the way back to the earliest agendas, you'll see some have an incredible amount of detail. And that's where I learned this is a really labor-intensive process, at least at the time, the tools we had. Along the way, we got to where we could scan a full packet, compress it, OCR it, and have something that was text searchable, copy and pasteable, and not unreasonable to download. As staff changed, that capability shifted back to the other way, and we've been doing big things. If you look at the document for the packet for this month, you'll notice that with the new scanner that the agency has, it's a much smaller download. So the issue with that diminishes somewhat, but it still needs to be OCR. So Clemens and I are looking at ways that staff might be able to pick that back up. But this is the kind of issue that, these are the kinds of issues that go to whether or not this site is really, oh, let me mention one more thing. The organization and the content of the website is really pretty much at the direction of the general manager now. He says this needs to go on the site, it goes on the site. Where I perceive the greatest need for the agency here is where I perceive the greatest need for the agency right now is in some support for staff to help with some of the more niggling bits. So for example, the preparation of a PDF that is not only text-based and copy pastable, searchable, but also has a table of contents at the front. That takes effort. Those don't just materialize on their own. Someone's got to make that. So if we have someone who's able to assemble a bunch of the materials we have and do essentially staff augmentation for that, I think it's a great idea. We may well have identified a candidate. I understand Catherine's got someone else in mind for us to talk to as well. Reorganizing, cleaning up, adding a few features to the site. I've got a number of ideas and spent some time with this consultant today talking about a range of things that we've explored, done trials on, and would like to see someone having the time to pick up and run with. For example, one item that I experimented with a while back was on the timeline, giving a visual and detailed presentation on the timeline to the building of, or for the Alta Vista well, that whole timeline. And it's actually very interesting when you see it. It's an experiment that I did, and one reason I haven't put it on the site is because, like we identified earlier about the park, it's great to do these things one time, but if you're not prepared to do them over and over, it may not be worth putting it out there. Not that it's not interesting, but until we know that we've got the resources to be able to do this time and again, it's really just an interesting idea. So I'm excited by the idea that we now are talking about committing some resources to this. One final thing on this, if you look at the website speed, it's been moved to a much faster server. If anybody experiences any speed problems with it, let me know. I think
It's much better. Real improvement.
And that's for the exorbitant price of $10 a month. It just took some time to get it moved over and
I'm glad we have
make
the
sure that it's
contingency
mostly
money.
working. If you find anything wrong with it, let me know. Right now it seems to be working fine, and ran some tests against it, it seems pretty good. But I think really where we are, whether or not the documents are up to date, that has a lot to do with whether we've got the time to get the documents together and available and posted. And that's, if you look now, everything that's on there, I believe, that purports to be, well, everything on the front page at the top, agendas, budget, CIPs, the the specifications, the applications, the current fee schedule, all that stuff is up to date. If you
Actually,
see something woefully out of date, let me know.
there is something that's woefully out of date. The fee structures are from 2010 and 2011, and then the current one. So you've got an information packet for those building a new home, fees effective July 2010, those aren't our current fees. Remodeling permit information application up to July 2010, those are not our current fees. Applying for water service for existing service, those are the 2011 fees. Applying for water service for new connection, those are the 2011 fees. And those are in 4 or 5 different documents. So to me, the issue is, as Scott rightfully pointed out, the time it takes to maintain this. So part of the criteria, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be what's the platform, and particularly how does the platform perform in terms of content management.
It's not about that. I've done this for years, and it's not about that. It's about having,
Really?
it's about having the documents that are prepared to be up there. If the documents that are up there are out of date,
Yeah,
the documents have to be updated. The content management system has nothing to do with that.
okay, so
so-
who does the content management? And if it isn't important, how does staff do it without an outside consultant?
Right now, the general manager decides what needs to go up on the site, and it says, put this on the site, it gets on the site. That can be done by me or a consultant. Right now, I don't bill, and if we decide to send it to someone who bills, that's fine, that's what other agencies do. Some agencies do it the way we're currently doing. So, not big ones, for sure, but small ones certainly have volunteers doing that kind of thing. And I'm not speaking to, I hope that what you hear me doing is sharing the kinds of things that actually are involved in this, and that, based on experience, seem to matter to people. People talk to me when it doesn't work. People talk to me when they can't find things. I would never position this is a professional operation on the website, but it is informative. If the documents that are there have errors that need to be updated, then they need to be identified. We need to bring it to the attention of staff and ask that staff get those updated. Typically, staff already knows what needs to be updated and has plans to get it done. Typically, like for example, the budget, we don't post it until we have it, so it wasn't getting posted until after the meeting of the 29th. If you see things in particular documents, this is the first time I've heard mention of specific things that are out of date. I relish having the list, because then we can go right after it without having to sit here and open every document and go, I wonder what he's talking about.
Okay.
If it's an Easter egg
I
hunt,
get
it's really
any
a
number of
fool's
comments
errand.
from people that they find our site difficult to navigate and non-intuitive. And
Show
obviously
me-
you're intimately familiar with it, so it's
Show
makes
me
sense to you.
anything, if
I'd
you've
be
got
happy
specific
to.
problems,
I'll give you an
let's talk
example.
specifics.
Look at the fees. You know, we've got fees up there in 5 different documents. The master list is an ordinance, first page of which is a bunch of whereases. You know, for somebody just wanting to build a new house or get connected, there's an easier way to do it. And frankly, the one that I looked at that made sense to me was CCWD. You click on go to, the first page gives you the rundown of what the rates are. And there are a number of attachments within that page. That organization is a lot easier for me to comprehend, you know?
Okay, so you're talking about the production of new information, because what you're criticizing is the record that the district makes through its actions. So the ordinance, that's how we enact the fees.
Right,
If
fine.
you want that recast into something more palatable and easier to navigate, that's not a website issue. That's you don't like the way the district's presenting this information at all.
It's certainly
That's
a
okay.
website issue. How
No,
you maintain
the
that
website- the
is
website
about.
sh- The website should never lead the agency. The agency should be leading, and the website should be a reflection of.
Scott, maybe you're technically light years ahead of me. All I know is, as a user and a consumer, when I look at the CCWD website and try to navigate through that, it's a whole different experience than when I try and navigate through ours. And what happens at CCWD, because I actually go and talk to these people, is that their in-house staff are capable of maintaining it on a WordPress platform. So I'm just throwing that into the hopper for discussion. I think we need help. I don't understand why it makes sense for you to do maintenance on our website. That's not a board responsibility.
It's never been a board responsibility.
Right.
And I've never done it as a board responsibility. I did this, in fact, I'll remind you that you were the one who encouraged me to come and volunteer to build the website.
How many years ago was that?
That was in '97.
And do we pretty much
And-
have a 97 website?
No, that's nonsense. And there's a lot of opinions about websites, but Bill's comment last time was, what was that comment?
I missed so many.
No, but this was the one about,
Feeding the hamsters because it was,
No, it was,
No, that never, any website.
Oh,
never, right?
okay, yeah, yeah, my memory fails me. No two people will agree on what's the perfect website. Different people peruse information different ways. There are shelves of books on this kind of stuff. I have a few myself. Could information be displayed in multi kinds of formats? You can do that, but there's a point where it will confuse people more. So do you need some kind of maybe, well, actually, the board needs to direct staff and any consultants they hire as to what's the goals of the website, and that means you have to define the audience, you have to define what information the audience is looking for, and how that audience by demographics is gonna look at it. And that takes some research, some time, some planning, and you hire a consultant, you pay the bill, the money, you get a good one and you get it done. But even with that, when you start talking to those consultants, they're gonna say, well, what do you want? It's like building a house, you know? You got 100 different ways to pick it, you got 1,000 colors to choose, and you guys have to sort of tell them what ballpark to start in, or they'll just eat up your money. And I'll tell you, whatever you do, by the time you get it out there, it's obsolete. And you have to start all over again.
I think Chris identifies some good issues, in particular about, look, if you're looking for the fees, I see no problem saying, let's distill this down into one nice, easy to read table. I think that's great, but it's a new document, and it has, the website is a vehicle for carrying that, but that same document should be in here for people who come to the counter, and for our staff to work from and answering questions on the phone. It's not a website issue, it's a district and how it wants to convey the information to the consuming public. So, this is why I'm pushing back and saying, this is not a place where the website may be an opportunity to explore some better ways to display the stuff, but it's not wrong in terms of what's being shown. That document you see when applying for water service, that is what the agency hands to people over the counter.
With
If
the
you don't
2010 rates? Is that what you're handing over the counter?
The document hasn't been updated because we haven't been issuing
No,
connections.
the question is that what you're handing out over the counter? The guys,
We do not hand that document out.
Then maybe we ought to take it off the website. But that's fine, that's easy. I can have that done before we finish this topic. But
Well,
But if
the other thing you can do is say this is the 2010, and it will be updated. It gives people a frame of reference.
But the point is, well, it's actually effective date September 2011. It's 1 year fresher than we've been saying. But
no, there's 2010 information there, Scott.
it says effective date September 2011.
Okay,
If the
look at one
document
that's
is, if the
2010.
document is wrong, it's an issue that's identified, let's fix the document. Let's not fix the wrong thing here, let's fix the right thing. If our presentation is,
Effective 2010, information packet for those building a new home.
oh, I'm sorry,
Fees effective
you're talking
July
new, I'm talking existing.
20.
Well, look, you're talking new, I'm talking existing, I'm sorry, let me get on the new document.
Okay.
Effective date September 2011.
I just clicked on
Page-
this through, information
one.
packet for those building new home, fees effective July 2010.
Yeah, there are some 2010 effective dates on there. I have to be running through the site.
Okay, so when
But
we,
that's easy to fix.
but 2010, 2011, okay, I just clicked on the top two links under applying for service. They both, on page one, say effective September 2011.
Mhm.
Attending to, asking the question, is this the current document? That's something with a little staff augmentation, I think that's great, let's do that. If there's a document that is incorrect, or misrepresents something, or has fallen into disuse because we're waiting for the coastal commission, let's take it down or comment it or something. But this isn't something, if a webmaster tried to do this on their own, they wouldn't be a webmaster in my house for very long. Okay, so this is a matter of, right now, the contents here are under the direction of the general manager. And if you got issue with any of the contents, let's take it up. But, you know, where I see the opportunities here, it's all around better information, some presentation. I'll tell you a difference between our site and CCWD. You can get to almost anything that you're looking for on the main page without clicking through, navigating, and having to figure things out. It's also a difference between us and the SAM webpage. But I'm not going to criticize the SAM webpage because I know how that came into being, and I'm very happy that we have one. And Tony was the lead on that and has been the heart of that for a long time, and it's a very rich information source. And it takes a little work to find the agenda, but honestly, I've never talked to Tony about, you know, it's a little hard to find the upcoming agenda. I'm not going to flog the website when I haven't had the conversation with Tony about the specific problem. If I have no doubt that in talking to any consultant, there's going to be some ideas on a better, fresher layout and how to use HTML5 and CSS to give us some wonderful presentation. I will tell you that I will vote against putting any Java or Flash content on our page. But
Thank you.
I will mention too that there is a local agency nearby that has been referenced often that uses Flash on their front page, and I can't support that. So, you know, fancy and flashy and great looking are all well and good, but this is Montara, and as a friend of mine likes to say that it's a town where it's real common to have a half wagon wheel in your front yard. I'm not embarrassed by the look of the system. Besides, I like the picture. I took it myself.
I am.
Hmm?
I am embarrassed by
Well,
something.
you feel free.
I am. I do feel free. That's why I'm saying it.
There's a rich abundance of information here, and I will mention too that with staff's help, this agency has been first on the coast side on every front of getting information of different kinds of media into the public's hands and in front of their eyes. And there's always opportunity to improve this stuff, and for free, it ain't half bad. In fact, it's not bad at all. There's a ton of information here. Something like 3,000 documents on this website, and most of them are not that hard to get to. Most of those are agendas. So, you know.
I don't think they're hard for you to get to. I think they're hard for somebody who's trying to approach us for the first time.
Well, this is part of why we have staff. These are to get things into their hands that they might have to come to the district to get. And there are things like, if you look at the applying for water service and the flow charts, staff created these things. If you don't like it, let's talk about how to make it better. But let's talk about real existing problems and specific things that we can do to get it fixed. No webmaster or web designer is going to solve the ongoing issue of, as we generate documents, they need to be full of information and easy to consume. So that's a whole different issue.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that, to direct the general manager to put out an RFP before the end of the year for a update to the website, and to have that implemented by the end of the first quarter next year.
I would think that.
I hear no second.
So that was
I-
on the minutes that I made the motion. and I
That
didn't
you
get a
made the
second.
motion, I'd like to hear from,
Well,
unless somebody
I'll
wants to.
second it for discussion.
You don't have to
Thank you.
second it unless you really want to have a vote on
We can vote on it.
it. All right.
I have my
Okay.
vote ready.
And we're not done with discussion, Leonard. I did write your name on the slip.
Judy, did you get that down?
I didn't expect a motion just then.
So
Bob,
if we're going to go through, I don't think anybody on the board is gonna say that the website is 100% the way we would like it to be. Okay, I think that's, I'm gonna try for these agreements first.
Bob's been a big critic along the years, right? I mean,
But it,
and I
it
value
isn't
that.
where we would like it to be. We're about to go into, and we're waiting for the new seated members of the public about where we wanna go and strategically go forward. What the future website should do, ought to stay away from, might be nice to have, all those things are part of strategy. So I would like to see that as part of whoever A, B, C, D, and E is, that we talk about, what does the public wanna see? We understand that we're not as savvy technically as Scott, and that maybe some people may have trouble filtering, but I agree with Bill. For every two people, there's gonna be three opinions, and so I think that the best thing to do is include that in our strategy. Therefore, get it done by end of year, get it done the next 2 weeks, and all that, doesn't make any sense to me. Just put it as part of the strategy, and at the end of it will come out a super website.
Okay.
Let me just note,
Let me
Yes.
note, we do have a public
okay,
speaker.
let me just note, on this kind of thing, this is actually well within the general manager's discretion. We can give him direction and we can tell him what to do, but if he takes action on this, he's fully empowered to do that.
Real quick, this is somewhat related. We have started, and I'm talking about 2 months ago, actually a revision of all the master documents for the district. And the main purpose there is actually to streamline the processes in general and also make water and sewer side much more combined and equal. So just so that the board knows that we're working on this, we're a small staff, it took some time, and
I'd like to see.
can't tell you when it's gonna be ready, but
I'd like to see if you think it would be helpful, I would like to see you get some assistance in some of the document preparation. I know, for example, when we've worked in the past on newsletters, we've done an okay job on our own, but when we brought in someone to help, it really got us a better result. And most of the documents that you see that you don't like the presentation of the documents, well, you know, staff created those, but staff does a lot of things and isn't specializing in that kind of document creation. I would like to see staff have the opportunity to bring in people who are good at shaping, especially documents that are intended for public consumption. I think, like, when I posted the current fee schedule, I looked at it and I thought, oh, you gotta go through 2 pages before you get to the numbers. I had the same impression, but I also know that this is the form in which the ordinance is created, and turning that into an easily consumable schedule of rates for consumers, there's 2 problems. One, we don't do that a lot, and 2, it's another document to get out of sync with the actual fee schedule. The fee schedule by ordinance is the actual up-to-date, accurate document. So, you know, it's, when you separate it into 2, then you've got more than twice the work, because now you've gotta make sure they stay in sync. And again, it's like, with all good ideas, unless you're prepared to do that each and every time and keep it up to date, then we shouldn't try to do that. So, at this point where we don't have the assistance for document creation like that, putting the uglier document up that is accurate is better than not putting it up, and it's better than trying to whip out something in a hurry and not having the time to.
And even better than having the accurate information up with inaccurate information simultaneously, which is what you have now. The problem that you're trying to avoid, which is a real one, is what we've already done to ourselves. We already have documents that are outdated because we've had an ordinance that superseded them. So the very problem that you're explaining, which is an extremely real one,
Yeah.
case in point, our website.
Well, right, well, but it's not the website, it's the documents themselves. The documents that are handed over the counter
Okay.
get out of date, and so this is where I'm saying, I think what we might be saying is, it's something in the way that we create some, I don't know if we do enough of this to warrant doing something big, but if we want to go after, you know, especially as you're redoing a bunch of these things and harmonizing the 2 sides of the agency, I would be very supportive of helping get some extra help from people who are good at that kind of communication. I know that underneath all this is a very strong foundation, and, we're talking about, you know, we need to pretty it up and make it easier to consume. That's something where we can get a specialist to help, and I'm supportive of that.
So Scott, you're against the motion because you want to continue to work with this with staff.
No, I'm not against the motion for that reason. I don't see the need for it because frankly, it's well within the authority of the general manager, and he's already taking it.
I
Gee, I
suggest,
was under the impression that that budget was just advisory and that everything that actually occurs that requires money, we approve again.
Well, there is
discretionary.
discretionary power that we have imbued.
So actually, this budget does bind or it doesn't bind?
No.
Your
The general
sarcasm,
manager,
Chris.
I mean,
Yeah,
that
you're
is
right.
just sarcasm, and frankly, we have mentioned many times that the general manager has the ministerial powers of the agency, and that the board has oversight, and the ministerial powers come with certain discretionary authority. This is a concept that I will just keep explaining and explaining and explaining because it's not getting through, but it is the fact, and I have said this before, and I'm saying it again, that's within the discretionary authority of the general manager. And
And
unless we wish to.
if he had a budget that was his marching orders
Chris, you're
for
straying into budget discussions, and we've
You
got
bet I
that
am,
coming.
which is
Wait,
why I
we
raised
have-
this.
We have
I
that
raised
coming
this
as the
specifically on
that-
the timing of the budget.
that was your
What I'm
motion.
being told is he does not need to come back to this, he has the discretion himself on this.
In fact, our policy is to give our general manager discretionary funds that, of up to $5,000 on, items which are, directed through the board, through the discussion. So if Clemens decided that it was advisory to work with somebody to update all of the problems that you have ever so assiduously pointed out tonight, then I would recommend that he do that as soon as possible. As far as working to reframe the website, I think that that might be the motion that I heard, which was to wait until January.
I would
That
point out
wasn't
that
the
the same
motion, but-
discretionary power led to the creation of these documents in the first place. The board did not make a standard water specifications document. That's the business of the district, and the general manager made sure it got done.
Yeah,
And it's just,
absolutely.
and so, you know, the sarcasm, it just doesn't really help on this because
Well, I'm trying to
the
make a
agency
point,
is doing
Scott,
its
I've been trying
job.
to make a point for weeks, that the budget has some authority and some clout and some meaning. And so every opportunity I have to reinforce that, I will.
I don't think you hear a lot of us objecting to the importance of the budget. The item under discussion is review and possible action concerning district website update.
I'm sorry, I just got a retort. We roundly rejected 4-1 the notion that the budget dictates action absent board direction. Where there are ministerial exceptions, where the ministerial function is involved and with the discretionary limits that this board has set, the executive of the agency is free to act. And it is improper for us unless we wish to change direction for the general manager. If we want to provide specific direction, we can always do that. But absent that, he's got a job to do, and he's got the authority to carry that out. And that,
Via the budget.
no, he has
Okay.
the authority to do
So
that.
let's agree to disagree, Scott, otherwise we're
Thank you.
gonna
Let's
go way
move
off
on.
topic here.
Let's move
Well, you know,
on.
I'm sorry, but on this point, this is,
No, you're not.
you're right, I am not sorry.
So let's have a discussion.
You wanna
That's what you want.
disagree, but the fact of the matter is, and you can ask council,
Gentlemen, we
you can
can
ask
have the
council,
discussion under
you
financials.
can ask council if you wish, but the general manager is imbued with the ministerial authority of the agency and is empowered by the board when we give him that job to do that. And in fact, there are certain activities that the general manager engages in which we are not authorized to interfere with. So without understanding this, the way these powers are separated, we could talk, you can say whatever you want about the budget, but without that fundamental understanding, all of it is pointless. The budget doesn't provide the authority. The authority comes from other places. The authority comes from board action and from board policy and state law. The budget is a whole different beast.
And gee, is that why that if we didn't have one adopted by September 1st, that we'd be in violation of the code?
Gentlemen,
Because there's no real authority
Chris,
coming from that
Chris,
budget.
let's close this item on the website and move on to your
Let's have
next
a vote.
item.
I have a motion.
Oh,
a
public
second.
comment, Scott. Leonard, I'm sorry. They look alike.
I got rid of my beard. We don't look alike.
Scott has hair too, so.
Oh, I got hair, it's just on top. You can go out and hire consultants to do the website, and what a few people know, mostly Scott, is that the GSD website started out by me stealing the MSD website and flipping it left to right because I like that look better. And Scott just had to laugh when I told him it was up and running, and it was hosted on his server for a number of years until our general manager basically made me move it to a server that didn't go down when the wind blew while it was raining, because we have third world power on the mid-coast.
That's PG&E. Not
Yeah,
much I could do.
yeah. As I said, we have third world power. So, I moved to Sonic.net, but I still maintain the website, but I don't do content. Everything comes from staff. And if staff doesn't give it to me to put on the website, it doesn't end up on the website. It's really that simple.
I don't know, that sounds third world now.
Now, I need to kind of get out of the business, and so I'm looking to move it to a Squarespace or a WordPress platform so that staff can do all of it. But even at that point, I'm still going to create the framework, and then after that, staff will be responsible for putting all the stuff up. But you really don't want to use the CCWD model or the SAM model, because every agenda that goes up, that's $35 to the consultant. Every rinky-dink little thing that is handed over to be put on a website, that's $35. And I got to tell you, approving this at the SAM board level, I get real tired of that, and I'm not happy with the charges for trivia maintaining the website. I think it needs to be done in-house, and that means a platform that the receptionist could put documents up on the website.
That's what CCWD is on. It's on WordPress, and their staff do the updates.
Well, I don't follow CCWD as close as I used to, but I know that at one time they were spending $35 for a consultant for every single update.
And I know I often couldn't find, and still can't find stuff on their website.
Now, as far as the documents and the download speed, I don't download stuff from your website very often, so I didn't know that it was moved to a faster server. But the issue with scanned documents, I'm taking heat for us not having our packets up, but the reason they're not up is because if we do it, we're going to do it your way, and they're going to be scanned documents, and then I'm going to take heat for the fact that they're scanned documents. So what I need to do is, and maybe Scott wants to do this with me, I want to meet with Sam's technical services supervisor and find out what is involved in doing it Sam's way, because Sam actually takes all the original electronic files, the Word files and whatever they are, and somehow throws them together and makes a single PDF, and I know for sure they're not spending very much staff time doing it, so I just want to find out how they're doing it, and then I think we'll do it the same way, and hopefully you will also. The last comment I have is, well, actually, you can watch the video. One of the problems with consultants, by the way, and this is why I've so far successfully blocked GSD from farming it out, the consultants always want to go out and use some proprietary expensive web composition tool that the next consultant's going to have a different one, and then they're going to throw out the website and start a whole new one, and you just keep having websites turned over. And so I think it's totally unacceptable to have a website that requires you to have some proprietary tool to maintain it. I still hand edit the HTML. And of course, the last comment is Flash is evil. Okay, and if you have a consultant who even hints that they want to use Flash, consider their bid to be completely non-responsive and unacceptable. Do not use Flash. Flash is the most overused thing on the web, and 99% of the use of Flash is unnecessary and unreasonable and inappropriate.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion. Could you restate the motion, please?
Bill, did you?
Didn't, oh, Bill, I don't see a slip from you. I'm sure you'll fill one out.
It's gonna be 5 or 6 from Bill tonight.
Hey, by now you should be able to build a whole house full of them.
Take care
So,
of one.
I don't want to get into the technical discussion that Scott and Leonard have been going down into. I think the board has a bigger issue in front of them. And it really is a definition of what message you want to have your website conveying. And you can't even discuss that as board members until you've done an inventory of who's accessing your website and why, and what information are they going there for. Along with what your strategic plan is coming up, how are you going to be expanding that out? It's the only technical stuff I go into is you've mentioned, Chris has mentioned WordPress, and I would talk to some of the MCC people. We went through going from a hand-tailored website that Scott and Leonard both seem to use because we all sort of copied the original,
I built the first.
right, MSD one, right?
No, I built the first MCC.
No, I know, but it was also,
I probably copied and
yeah,
pasted, sure.
yeah. I mean, it's yet another child of the bastard that you've been running for many years.
What?
If I can say that on TV.
Gentlemen,
I
let's-
actually got it from the San Jose Mercury News early on.
Can I, just to
Look,
get back, I know, and I have to,
it's approaching 11, and
I
we
have
have
to
some
go.
very
I have to
serious
go, but let
items.
me get back to, you always cut me off, you let everybody else run forever, but,
That's
you
because
know,
you're last.
I'm trying to help you here. It's like, before you go there, you really have to put together what's your overriding goals. I mean, and to put a time limit on it, or to even be discussing what to do, as far as consultants go, how are you gonna tell the consultant what you want them to bid on? I mean, like I said, WordPress is good, but a lot of people have moved on to Squarespace, is it? Or whatever.
Squarespace is what MCC is using,
Yeah, right. And so, you might, and there might be something better now, because we did that over a year and a half ago, but I'll see if we can dig out the notes why we choose one over another, but you need some data before you start jumping on that. For now, what's the minimal you can do to make people happy until you get all the big questions answered?
Scott, that name was Eric Godfrey.
Eric Godfrey?
G-O-T-F-R-I-D.
I get bonus for that, but no, I get an 8:30 meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, I would have remembered if I.
could we,
Stop for a second to change.
certainly, we will take a
go 4 hours, so.
5-minute break, thank you.
Does PCT have a way to stream something other than Windows media format? No, I'm looking at it. Oh, no, you're only because you were ducking.
What's that again? I'm sorry.
So PCT, as far as I can tell, is only streaming Windows media format.
Probably, all I do is do the DVDs and turn them over, so I don't know what they're up to. I wish I could answer that question for you right now.
No,
but,
I'll call it.
I avoid the depths of technology.
Yeah, I know. There's only
yet.
5 minutes left in the meeting.
We got
which
4
means
minutes
Leonard can't
before we
speak.
have to
Well, I thought we were putting that first part on the ending end, and if we are, I pretty
Listen
good.
to these guys, and they don't even see the real problem. The real problem is you need another staff person that can manage the damn thing.
Hey, Jim,
You as a
look at
board
the
member
mirror.
should not be doing it, even though you do it for free. Neither should Lauren. Down there.
It's always been staff augmentation.
I understand that, but that's where the real problem is.